I'm Austin Briggs. I'm the founder of the Cleveland School of Cannabis, and I want to speak about some of the specifics relating to the Jobs and Equity Fund in Issue 2 that was supported by the voters but seems to be at risk under some of the proposed revisions.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Edwards.
Here.
Vice Chair LeRae. Regular Sweeney.
Here.
Abrams. Brent. Callender. Brothers. Cross. Catrona. Gabar's excused. Grimm.
Here.
Hoops. Humphrey. Isaacson. Here. Geralds. Jones. Lipton. Wojcik. Checked in. Manning. Joe Miller. K. Miller. Patton. Liga. Peterson. Richardson. Rob Blaisdell. Robinson. Schmidt. Skindle. Swearingen. C. Thomas. Troy checked in. White.
We actually do not have a quorum present, so we will be operating under as a subcommittee until we get a quorum present. When we do get a quorum present, we'll circle back to approve the minutes. As a reminder to the committee, all the supporting documents and testimony can be found on the iPads. I'd also like to point out the written testimony submitted, which is located at the bottom of the iPads. Again, another reminder, if there's anyone taking photos or videos in the committee room, please come up front to fill out a media request form that are located at the tables in the front. We'll have time for public comment at the end of submitted testimony. If you're planning to comment at the end and didn't submit your testimony already, there are also witness forms up here at the front tables that need to be filled out before you can testify, and we'll collect them at the end. I now bring forward House Bill 354 for its third hearing. The chair would call on Austin Briggs from the Cleveland School of Cannabis to testify.
Thank you. I'm Austin Briggs. I'm the founder of the Cleveland School of Cannabis, and I want to speak about some of the specifics relating to the Jobs and Equity Fund in Issue 2 that was supported by the voters but seems to be at risk under some of the proposed revisions. In this December, the Cleveland School of Cannabis became the first and only accredited cannabis school to be recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. We've been serving the Ohio medical program since 2017, and out of the 6,500 current employees in the program, over 1,000 of them graduated from our programs. I grew up in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. I went to Kent State University. I'm a homegrown entrepreneur. I was in one of the first Kent State entrepreneurship programs they had. I spent 7 years in California, where I was introduced to the cannabis industry until moving back here in 2016 when Ohio decided to legalize to start the school so I could assist the state in launching an effective cannabis program. We're a state-approved school. In addition to workforce development, we do continuing education and consulting, and we can help resolve a lot of issues, I think, that are arising through this whole process just from a lack of education. We currently train the Florida Board of Health's Medical Marijuana Division, and we continue to serve the licensees inside and outside of the state of Ohio. So before I get into the specifics, I want to introduce myself and let you know that you and your affiliates can always lean on us if there's any gaps that you need to fill as far as education, statistics, in the industry. We're a resource that you can lean on. My specific request today is related to something that a lot of you may have not thought about. It's very rare that an industry this size is born out of thin air, and what I mean by that is it's not going to follow a traditional trajectory of a new industry where demand has to come, over a 5-10 year span. The demand for this product is already here, and the growth is going to happen very rapidly. But when it does, the success of an industry is largely dependent on the size and the quality of its workforce. Workforce development is so crucial that the federal government pours billions of dollars into the workforce development in Ohio through the WIOA, Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. And those funds are distributed through the counties and allocated to support job training in growing industries, which I think this fits. Early in our journey, we were approached by representatives from Ohio Means Jobs and the VA who had people coming to them that wanted to participate in the cannabis field. In both cases, the Ohio offices wanted to support their needs and were very friendly and accommodating. Now, at the time in 2018, there was no written language prohibiting them from supporting these career pathways, other than the fact that we weren't yet accredited by the U.S. Department of Education. So we looked at our organization and realized that we would not be able to survive for a long time without having this traditional financial support. So we went on a 5-year journey to pursue this accreditation through the U.S. Department of Education. However, in 2001 and 2002, directives were handed down both from the VA and Ohio Means Jobs that these funds could not be allocated to cannabis education, accredited or not. I say that to say this: there's a lot of organizations that could benefit from these tax dollars, and a lot of them have worthy causes. But as Tim Johnson pointed out yesterday, a lot of these organizations have multiple funding sources. When it comes to workforce development, there is no other funding source that can be allocated to workforce development in the cannabis industry. None of the traditional sources are there, whether that be the WIOA funds or Title IV funding so that people can take programs through their community colleges. None of that exists. What an industry this size looks like without workforce development support, we have no examples of. There's no industry that's not supported by workforce development. On the low end, this program will support about 40,000 new jobs over the next 8 years, and on the high end, about 62,000 jobs. Either way, that makes the cannabis industry one of the top 2 fastest growing job sectors in the state. The impact of workforce development is well known, and there's no need for me to dig into the statistics, but workforce development is one of the things that is guaranteed to pay for itself through lower turnover, increased efficiency, increased wages, and increased productivity throughout the supply chain. I asked that the House keep a significant, and I understand that there's going to be some back and forth and negotiation, but I asked that the House helps keep a significant portion of the Jobs and Equity Fund to allocate a specific part of that fund to education, jobs, and workforce development, specifically in the cannabis industry. Because if that distinction is not made, and the funds may fall into the laps of organizations that are prohibited from supporting the cannabis industry. And another thing I want to bring up before I close is that when we talk about social equity, which is tied into this same proportion of funds, we often focus a lot on the social equity licenses, and we forget to recognize that over 90% of the inequity in this industry is on the employment side. We have to make sure that people in the communities that these businesses are going, that those folks can get jobs and they can get high-paying jobs and that they can climb the ladder. And that really only happens with people who have a fundamental education in the industry. So there are many ways to allocate these funds, and I don't want to get into the specifics of that. My purpose here was just to make sure that the House was aware that these traditional funds that are allocated to workforce development and every other booming industry that's creating jobs are not available to this industry. And workforce development is crucial, so we have to make that distinction, and we have to allocate a certain amount of the jobs fund that can be used specifically for cannabis education and workforce development.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs. We have questions. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize if you went over this before I came in, but I'm just curious. Can you talk just a little bit about your program and the education?
Yeah, so the core of what we do is career-focused education. So we have career paths in extraction, cultivation, and dispensary operations, as well as medical applications of cannabis. And then we have an executive program that takes people through that entire supply chain. So what that does especially for Ohio employees, is it allows them then to get a job at one facility, and especially when they're vertically integrated, then be able to move horizontally, not just vertically, but they can now, if someone opens 2 dispensaries and they have a good employee, that employee can go manage a dispensary because they're trained throughout the entire supply chain instead of just being, having some experience in extraction or cultivation, which most people just have an expertise in a small area, if any expertise at all. But we try to train people throughout the whole supply chain so that they can move about, and that really helps companies to grow a lot faster and have a lot lower turnover.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quickly, certificate program, 2-year program, how many hours?
So we specialize in certificate programs. They range from anywhere from 3 months to 9 months is our longest program. And so everything is completed, in under 1 year. And then we also do partnerships, with community colleges. The latest states to implement education funds were Illinois and New York. And both of those, we have partnerships with community colleges in those states that we provide curriculum to, and we handle that, through that partnership, and they get basically awarded the funds through the state, and then they license the curriculum through us.
Thank you, Representative Kevin Miller. Any other? Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you for your testimony and appreciate what you're doing for the state.
Thank you.
You indicated that there were over 6,500 jobs and over 1,000 of those came through your program.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an idea of the types of jobs as well as the average salaries related to those jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the great things about the jobs is a lot of them are low impact jobs. So we've also helped out the workers' comp board with people who are injured on the job and needed a low impact job. So the main entry level positions are either someone who works the register at a dispensary or somebody who's trimming in a grow facility. And those wages are usually 11% higher. Yahoo Finance said on average they're 11% higher than comparative industries for the same type of work. So people are starting out at a higher wage, but what's happening is they're climbing the ladder a lot faster, especially when they have the education. However, the downside to it is being in the school now for 7 years, we've had to turn probably over 1,500 students away who couldn't find the support to support the program. So the demographic of people who come and apply to go to the school looks a lot different from the demographic that comes out or is actually able to enroll and pay for the program and find work and meaningful work in the industry. So it's really creating a disadvantage to people who just don't have the resources to pay for it.
Mr. Chairman, follow up?
Follow up?
Okay, I'm just trying to get to, is it $10 an hour, $15 an hour?
So the average is $16.25 starting wage in the industry.
Okay.
And then, but like I said, a lot of these companies are growing very quickly. So we have students with no college education at all that are now making $140,000 as marketing directors, for their companies. So we have countless examples of people who are now in leadership positions throughout the state of Ohio.
All right, one last question. Then.
Follow up?
What is the cost to the student to go through your program?
So,
and how is that paid for?
Right. So traditionally, we've just kind of reformatted our cost structure to make it more affordable. But the executive program was $14,000. We just lowered it down to $10,000. And then the single tracks, which would be just in horticulture, just in extraction, those programs were $7,000, and now they're down to $4,000. And so we've decreased the price there, but traditionally it's all either cash pay or they would have to go through one of our funding partners, but they would have to have a credit score usually over like 640 to get approved, for those. So it's very limited, and it's mostly, people who can afford to pay upfront.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I have one question. It's kind of random, but I've been
Sure.
waiting for the right witness to ask this to.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio, are we missing the boat a little bit on testing? I'm told we have minimal level testing to get to market. Is there something to, or other states, or what you've studied, is there other things that we could do to test quality of product for consumers?
Yes, absolutely. And when I told you we do the Board of Health for Florida, that's exactly what we do. Is we go through your goals and what you're trying to do, and we customize. Their program was specifically in the extraction field, so they just wanted to know how they regulate it both for health and quality, but then also how do you judge how much loss you're supposed to get at each step of the process, how much waste they're supposed to get, stuff like that, to help the regulatory body, know what they're talking about when they're going to audit a facility. So we can absolutely help with that, and I'm sure there are some things that that we could test for, but I think right now Ohio is pretty solid on their testing.
Gotcha.
And we've served a lot of different states, and I can't say this about the Ohio medical program right now, is that it is a good solid program, and it's monitored well, and the people are operating very efficiently here compared to what we're seeing in other states. So I think it is a great foundation to build upon with this rec program if we do it right. But again, education is going to be a huge part of that, and not just for jobs, but for the people, the regulatory bodies, for the police who need to be trained or retrained on what cannabis is and how to handle it. There's just education that has to happen all around the board, and I would hate for that to get lost in this bill because everyone's going to pay the price for it.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today.
Thank you.
We're going to circle back. We now have a quorum present, and we'll be operating as a full committee. We will vote to approve, or without objection, we'll vote to approve the minutes from the previous committee. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the minutes of the previous meeting are approved and are part of the record. We will now call on Cody Merica to provide proponent testimony. Cody not here? Okay, we'll move on to Mo Dayam. Apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Mo, the floor is yours.
Hello. First, I wanted to thank you all for all the time and effort you guys are putting forth to make sure you guys understand this bill. And I know some of it is not easy to understand, and I truly thank you for your efforts here. I'm here today to speak on House Bill 354 and also House Bill 86 as it pertains to hemp and the legal definition of hemp. And I'm here to tell you that the changes that are in these bills will drastically negatively impact the consumers, the business owners, and farmers of hemp. And, when I first started reading through these bills, I reached out to industry experts, and I asked, how are these bills going to impact companies like mine that deal with hemp? And the question I was asked after review was, what percentage of your business, proceeds are from hemp? And I explained that about 60% of my net income comes from hemp-derived products. And I was told, if these bills go into effect and they're signed the way that they are, and the language does not change regarding hemp, say goodbye to 60% of your business immediately. The language changes the definition of hemp from what the 2018 Farm Bill basically established. And it criminalizes hemp and a lot of the derivatives of hemp. I'm here today to say I'm asking you to keep the hemp aspect of these bills, keep that either separate or keep the definitions the same as in line with federal definitions. There's a lot of consumers of hemp. There's a lot of people that use hemp products on a daily basis that are not going to be happy if we start changing the definitions here. A lot of people that use hemp don't want to walk into a dispensary to purchase their hemp-related products. They don't want the stigma that's attached. And they want to be able to continue shopping locally for those products. And approximately right now, there's about roughly 2,000 retail establishments in Ohio alone that sell hemp-related products. And if these bills go into effect with the language that's in there regarding hemp, we're looking at immediately seeing, all these retailers not able to continue selling these hemp-related products. And you're talking about a loss of 8,200 jobs. You're talking about over $70 million in lost state income and sales tax revenue. You're also talking about monopolizing an industry. So if you're taking away the ability of retailers to sell hemp-related products, that's preventing, thousands of retail establishments from being able to, sell these products, keep their employees employed. And you're also going to be destroying the livelihood of farmers. Let me see here. The majority of the industry wants to see that there's regulation to hemp, that, we address licensing, that we address packaging, testing, labeling, advertising, and, make policy and regulation that is common and consistent with other states. There's a bunch of other states that tried doing what Ohio's planning on doing with the bill in regards to hemp, but they ended up regulating hemp instead of banning it. And, they came up with a more logical, more, way of regulating the industry instead of an outright ban. And that's what I'm asking here, is that we address this hemp issue in a proper way that's not going to negatively impact thousands of Ohioans. And the voters on, the people that voted for issue 2, they're not against regulating hemp. They want to see the regulation. I don't think that they'll actually be happy with the language that's contained in these bills when it comes to hemp, because you're basically taking something that the federal government said is legal, and Ohio's saying, we're going to make this illegal again. We're going to classify it as a controlled substance. And, I've spoken to hundreds of business associates, friends of mine, other retail stores, that had no idea that this was actually happening. This kind of came upon them so fast, they didn't have time to react. And, after reading this, I realized that once this is signed, immediately, these businesses have to take these products off their shelves. So you're talking about anywhere from like $50,000 to $100,000 or more of inventory that will become illegal immediately once this bill is signed. That's a major loss that thousands of retailers are going to have to take. And, the end result is going to be a lot of lost jobs, a lot of people that are going to lose their livelihood. So I'm asking you to give the hemp issue more time, possibly separate it from these bills, and let's regulate hemp, because I agree, hemp needs to be regulated. Let's regulate it at a later time, when we can bring more discussion to this issue and not, rush into it and cause a lot of issues that I think, a lot of people are not aware of right now. And again, I ask that we look at other states, how they regulated hemp. Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, all of these states have regulated it, and it's worked perfect. So that's basically it.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I think there's some confusion on the committee, but rather than me ask, I'm going to hand it over to Representative Callender.
Thank you, and thank you for coming in and testifying. It is nerve-wracking to get up there and stand in front of a bunch of folks in suits and get grilled, but I do have a couple of questions, and again, I want to thank you for your courage and for your passion for the industry for being up there. But I want to be real clear that House Bill 354 and Issue 2, neither one touched hemp in any way, shape, or form. There was no regulation. There's nothing in there. The Senate did put some restrictions in when they amended House Bill 86. I haven't looked at the details, but I know those are clearly not in anything that this chamber has dealt with. I think there's a desire, I think I speak for most House members, that there's a desire to deal with the implementation of Issue 2 as passed by the voters, not changing it, But there's a lot of gray areas and a lot of implementation issues, rules that will go through the Department of Commerce that the legislature and this chamber, I think, would like to have some input in around safety of the children, non-exposure to secondhand smoke, stuff that's consistent with what the voters voted on. Hemp is working its way into the conversation, but is not currently included at all. If that gets included, I'm sure there will be hearings and a chance for the public to be involved. But I will say, from the industry standpoint, one of the reasons it's being discussed is that some of the Delta 8 and Delta 9 product now have THC levels that are rivaling or even surpassing the THC levels in the cannabis that is legalized under Issue 2. And the fact that there are no regulations as to age restrictions on buying it, where it is sold. You have 16-year-olds that are able to go to the gas station on the corner and purchase it. And that kind of thing does raise red flags for lawmakers, legislators, parents, schools, and others that are impacted by that. So while that is not an issue today, and I don't think it's appropriate to discuss the details, I would say, as a representative of the industry, it would probably be a good idea for those in the sector to differentiate the legitimate hemp dealers, people selling CBD for relaxation purposes or for some of the medical properties it has, or some of the wonderful properties that CBD has, to separate themselves from those that are marketing high THC content, Delta 8 and Delta 9, towards the youth. Because it's very easy for folks who don't know the distinction to paint a broad brush over the whole hemp industry. So I would just caution that as an industry and a responsible member of that sector, that you work to, I understand why the members of this chamber, and I don't disagree with them, feel that we need to step in on especially those products. So with that, I guess that's not a direct question, but I just wanted to clarify that 354, which is what this
Yes.
hearing is on, has nothing dealing with hemp, CBD, or anything in that range.
Thank you. Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. He clarified my questions, so
All right.
I don't have the need.
Representative Patton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, sir. Thank you for being here today. Since November's election, I think we're all going back to study hall to try to figure out, hemp and marijuana I used to think was the same thing. I used to think cannabis was just hemp and marijuana all together. And now we hear terms like THC levels, and we hear things like Delta 8, Delta 10, was that? Delta, Delta 8, Delta 9, And so I got a phone call on my way down to Columbus Monday night from a gentleman out in California, and calling on behalf of, I think, probably one of your colleagues or organization, and a treasure trove of information. Again, I'm in the car driving down 71, so I was a captive audience, and it was dark out. I couldn't even look at the landscape. So, but one of the things he told me, we have companies like Giant Eagle selling hemp. And as you mentioned, he mentioned to me, and I don't know if this coincides with your document, that currently nearly $500 million in the state of Ohio is being spent on hemp. There's people that like the hemp effect because it doesn't make them high, but it will relax them. There's people that, like it because it helps them sleep. There's people that like them because if they're getting in an airplane, it makes them less anxious. And so, in deference to Representative Callender, I know that when you get involved with hemp that has a higher level of THC, which then rivals that of the marijuana stuff. But I think that your offer, and you're only speaking for yourself, I know, but as I got off the phone, I thought to myself, well, they said they want to be regulated. It's regulated in other states. Let's regulate it so we can control the bad actors. Let's get the registration fee, and let's make sure we're getting all the necessary taxes, because that's what we do in Ohio. I mean, it's only fair if we're going to tax the other stuff that the good people of Ohio voted for. But we should, if people are making this available, if they made it available to themselves, have been utilizing it for a long time now. As I say, they're not going into necessarily the corner gas station. They're going into Giant Eagle and other supermarkets to buy it. I think the committee, not necessarily in this particular bill, but I think going down the road, we need to protect this industry for people that want to take advantage of what hemp can provide to the level without competing with, again, for the people that want to utilize it but not get the major high that they're going to get. Would that be something that you believe your organization would support?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That's all I got you.
Thank you, Representative Patton. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, sir. This is more of just a comment, more so than a question, because I'm getting a lot of calls from folks that in my district that just don't understand the process. And what I just want folks to understand is that the citizens spoke. The Senate looked at what the citizens had spoken on and made some changes and made some recommendations, and then they sent that over to us. Now, what we're doing is looking at what the Senate sent us in terms of their changes, and we're going through all of that process, and at some point, there will be an agreed-upon process of moving forward where both the Senate and the House will agree. So nothing is moving forward until the Senate and the House agree on how we should move forward. So just so everybody can understand that.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Representative Thomas. Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mo, for being here. I got here kind of late, and I was listening to you, and it was just a lot of things that I was trying to go through. But my question to you is, you speak about the workforce development and how you all will be impacted. I'm looking here for specific examples because that's kind of how I operate, just to make sure that I understand certain things. And I wanted to know if you could provide some examples as to what or how you all will, the workforce will be impacted with some of the changes and things of that nature, just so that I understand.
Sure. So with some of the language that was put out there, if we don't regulate and if we change the definition of hemp and we start implementing, new laws that basically will restrict the sale of hemp products and, start banning certain aspects of hemp, obviously it's going to have a trickle-down effect. So businesses will lose revenue, and as a result, they're going to have to cut their workforce. And it just, kind of trickles down, and, depending on what happens, we could see a lot of people lose their jobs because their companies, their employers are not able to continue doing business, selling the products that they once were. And that's essentially what will happen.
Thank you, Representative Humphrey. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today. We will now call on Brandon Baker. Mr. Baker, the floor is yours.
How are you guys doing today? So I've got to watch both video recordings of the Senate meeting and then the meeting that occurred yesterday. And for me, while I'm here today, and I think one thing that hasn't really been spoken on about too much in those is the home grow law. I know HB 86 wanted to nix it, and then I know now they're at a 6 plant count limit. I remember listening to Mr. McCauley, I think his name is, his reasoning for wanting to get rid of home grow was because of the amount that 12 plants could produce, and then on top of that, how many joints, I guess essentially was associated with that. I also remember there's a guy yesterday that was in charge of the Cannabis Museum in Athens. And he brought up a really good point and something that I kind of want to touch on today. The first thing being many people that try it are going to fail. That's just one of the nature of the beast. A lot of people get into it thinking that it's like, it's something that's easy, and then they find out how much time, how much effort, how much care you actually have to have for the plant. I think the biggest misconception about home grow and, plant count associated with weight is, how to actually get there. And he was saying something on the lines of, you could create like 1.5 pounds, certain things. But he didn't really specify on what you actually need to be able to, grow that much. There's lights that are involved. Those lights are not cheap. They run anywhere from $800 to $1,200 a piece. And then you have CO2, which is involved. Those systems also aren't very cheap. Also, it's not very accessible to be able to fill up those CO2 canisters. So that's the biggest misconception is if we give them more plants or the plant count is higher, that they'll be able to grow more. I've been lucky enough to work in the industry. So for somebody like me, could I possibly get that out of that many plants? 100%. But that wouldn't change if I had, 6 plants versus 12 plants. So to kind of, stigmatize, plant count versus weight, it doesn't really correlate unless you kind of really know what you're doing. Secondly, I know there was one individual in here. I know she didn't want to talk about the black market and how it stigmatizes, the word black, but I'm going to speak on the black market for a little bit, and something that isn't talked about much on why the black market actually, kind of exists. I know there's a lot of talk about, if we don't regulate it this way, then the black market is going to explode, or if we don't, tax a certain amount, then the black market will explode, or again, if we have a certain plant count, then the black market is going to explode. One thing that isn't talked about is why the black market actually exists. And I think the president from Galenas yesterday spoke about it, pretty well. He spoke about how expensive it is to actually get into the industry. And you have people out there like me that, we would love to be able to do this legally. I can tell you from the first time I ever smoked, I always told myself I would do this, but I would always try to do it the right way. But there's so many hurdles that are involved in actually be able to get into the industry that many people aren't able to do that, which then causes, then you have your black market. Most people, they say, well, if I can't do it legally, I'll just get the money, illegally. And, it's one of those things where if there is a route for, inspiring growers like myself to be able to get into the industry, a little bit cheaper besides working for somebody else, and then on top of, being my own boss, because that's what I aspire, to be at some point. I want to create generational wealth for my family. And, cannabis is just honestly something that I've got the pleasure just to be good at. So my ask is that we consider a craft license, something on a smaller scale, around 500 square foot, give us access to testing as a craft license, and then also give us access to being able to register with metric tags like the commercial grow setting, make the licensing a little bit cheaper on a smaller footprint. Because right now I think the level 3s, I believe, inside of the bill was set at 5,000 square foot. That's still a very big chunk of change to be able to get into it. And then also, the equipment. Like I said, some of those lights run you, $800 to $1,200. Dehumidifiers run you, anywhere from, $5,000 to $10,000. So it's not something that's easily accessible. The licensing fees are expensive, lawyers, this and that. So that's kind of one of the things that I really want to talk about was like the home grow, and then possibly considering a smaller, licensing for, small guys like me. I know one thing we said yesterday that we didn't want to create was a have and have nots, and kind of how it's set up. That's essentially what it creates, because you get people that have money that can really get into it, and then you have people that inspire to get into it that don't ever get the chance, and then now they end up turning to the black market. So that's really all I really kind of wanted to testify today. And
Thank you, Mr. Baker, for being here and your testimony. Do we have questions for the witness? Ranking Member Sweeney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for coming out to testify today. I just want your thoughts on the home grow piece.
Yes, ma'am.
I can say from definitely my perspective, and I really appreciate the sponsor of the bill before us today and a lot of people in my caucus, that our goal, and specifically mine I can speak to, is to make sure that as issue 2 passed by the voters and what they knew that they were voting on is what maintains law. And so could you, from your own perspective and any anecdotal stories of people's, to whether or not homegrown was important to why they were supporting issue 2, and whether or not they was very clear that, it was 12 plants, for a household, and that was a crucial component of why people were, from your perspective, supporting that to become part of law.
Yes, ma'am. Can I speak? Okay. So one guy spoke on it yesterday. He had the Ohio Cannabis shirt on yesterday. The biggest thing about plant count that I think was important was you're going to have, how are you able to set up your perpetual cycle, essentially? There's a seed clone cycle, you have your vegetative cycle, and then you have your flowering cycle. The issue with kind of like the 3-plant or the 6-plant and HB 86 was it kind of limits on how many flowering plants I can have versus how many vegetative plants I can have. Essentially, you want to have your vegetative plants so you can, cut your clones off of. You then have your clones, and then you're able to start your cycle right after you cut, your harvest down. So I'm pretty well endowed in Instagram, and I can tell you just from seeing people in the industry, bud tenders, even cultivators, as myself, people I used to work with, the home grow piece was a big thing to them because for them, they do it. This is what they do on a regular basis. And sometimes the price can be expensive. The medical market is not cheap. And then on top of that, the weights are kind of iffy. I know something else that, kind of hasn't been talked about is, how much one person can consume versus the other. In the medical market, I think it's like you get a tenth or something like that, which is 2.83 grams. Some people, that doesn't do anything for them. Some people, it'll put them on the couch for, a week. It's kind of like the same thing as alcohol, right? You have people that can, do some Everclear and be okay, and then you have people that can, drink it and just be fine. So the plant cow was important just because, it gives you freedom to kind of, have more flowering plants versus, vegetative plants. It allows you to keep that cycle kind of moving. And like the guy from Ohio Cannabis said yesterday, it doesn't stop you from having your medicine, which most people, that's what they're going to, use it for. They're going to use it to sleep. I know, like the gentleman over there said, they're going to use it to, when they go on planes. Some people are going to, they have machines where you can decarboxylate it. They're going to put it in their own gummies, whatever it may be. So it just really gives you the freedom to, kind of not have to, limit how many actually flowering plants that you have. And I know just seeing from, Instagram and people I've talked to, that was very important.
Thank you, Ranking Member Sweeney. Representative Brent.
Thank you, Chair. From the Chair to the witness, thank you so much for coming to our committee. We have talked a lot about home grow, and you brought up something that I'm really interested in from my multiple trips to Michigan for whatever reason. But I didn't say it was for those. But one thing, and I want to just kind of understand, you said about a craft license.
Correct.
Are you familiar with the micro business license they have in Michigan?
Correct. I believe that started with their caregiver system, and then it kind of evolved into the micro licenses where it was like smaller footprint grows. If I'm speaking about it correctly.
Yes. So with the micro license, it's a $3,000 non-refundable license fee. With that, are you trying to suggest that we have something similar to what Michigan has? I'm just so we can.
Yes, ma'am. Just because of just the price point of entry. I mean, some of these level ones are, they're 20 million, 40 million, and some of, average Americans aren't going to ever see that money in their lifetime. Also, like, I don't know about you, but I don't know 15 people that can get together, $20 million either. So for me, it's really, it's like they spoke about yesterday, creating a market that's a have and have not. The medical market got kind of introduced that way just because of all the, I wouldn't say insane, but it was $500,000 in liquid assets. You had to have, a certain amount of cash available. You had to have the building available right away. It was a lot to where it didn't consider, the average person that wants to, grow and provide for the family. So for me, as a smaller guy that, that kind of wants to get out on his own, again, I would love to build generational wealth for my family as well. A smaller license would definitely allow us, us smaller to get in at a smaller price point, smaller footprint, and then be able to build up to, a level 1 or get bought out or, something like that.
Chairman, just a point of clarification about when I say a micro business, you can only have up to 150 plants in Michigan.
Correct.
You already have to have your lease or own the building.
Correct.
And you have to have that within 60 days of even turning in your application fees. So it's not that much different than what we expect from our cultivators right now, because they do have to have a lease or deed of owning a building 60 days within turning in their application. So you will still run into that same situation, but it'll be for a smaller price, which Michigan is for $3,000. We don't even have that capability here in the state of Ohio with our current bill language. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Brent. Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate it. And thank you, Brendan, for being here today. I have a question about, you talk about here in your testimony, the written testimony here, you talk about health and safety. A part of my question is, with home grow, being in your home, primary residence, and all of that, how are you going, or not just you, but just in general, how do you see this working? Basically preventing unauthorized access. Like, how do you ensure that this is safe, and just how do you ensure that? Because looking at the bill language itself, it doesn't, sometimes it looks just kind of not clear. So I just want to know your perspective. How do you see that happening?
So can I ask for clarification? Are you asking essentially how can we keep it safe inside the home?
Yes.
Okay. I have four kids at my house. For me, I think it's about, number one, it's about education. Educating the people around you for them to understand what's for them and what's not for them. I know I've heard a lot about, kids getting into gummies, things being left out, certain things like that. I'm a patient inside of Ohio, and I can tell you that my kids have never, ever touched anything that I've had. The second thing is, for me, it's kind of tough, just because, number one, like, I have a basement. If I were to do it, I would lock it down in my basement. Nobody would ever see it. I'd put a pen pad on it, so I have access down to the basement. For other people, they don't have that kind of accessibility, so the only thing they're going to have is a tent, or a closet or anything like that. I think it's really hard to, I'm not going to be dishonest. I don't think it'd be really possible to safely keep a tent hidden, I guess, if you don't have the capabilities. So I think your question really depends on the capabilities of the house. I have a basement, so I would be able to lock it up. Other people may not have that same luxury.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so this leads me to a whole nother direction. Thank you for that insight. So I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but would you say that in order to do home grow, there should be some type of provision, regulation, whatever, to prevent or to ensure that the product was safe? So to keep kids out, to essentially keep folks who were trying to enter your home who weren't supposed to.
I got you.
You know, would you say, or would you agree that there should be some type of regulation there to say, okay, so I get you guys do tents or whatever, but you should have a safe. You should have all these other things to keep the product safe. Would you say that there should be some provision there for that?
Yes, we. So yes, and I think there is some language in there with that right now, because I believe it says that it has to be in the comfort of your home. I believe that it says that it has to be either in a greenhouse, a closet. It has to be in a confined space. I think it's going to be. I think that would be really hard, just because you're asking people like of the confines of their home to, you know, what are they actually able to do? Like I said, my basement, I could secure it in my basement. Other people may not have that luxury to put it in a basement or a closet, or they may have to put it in an extra bedroom. I believe really the thing is we need to push education. And I know you spoke about, you know, people entering the home and stuff and things of that sort. And I know that could be a worry in certain areas that we do have. But I think that definitely does go back to my last my last, you know, statement about the black market. The black market strictly, to me, exists, especially in the cannabis world, is because there's people out there that want to do it, but they're just not able to. So I feel like, and I know multiple people have spoken on it, if we do this the right way, we could be the first state to kind of like embrace that black market, opposed to kind of oppose it, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying in a way of, you know, let's just let them go or let criminals be criminals. I'm more saying we can do this the right way, to where it gives everybody a fair opportunity to enter the market. And I feel like that in turn will then, you know, kind of limit the crime, you know, limit people having to break into people's houses, you know, things of that sort.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, okay, Brennan, again, thank you for your response. I agree with everything you're saying. I'm really big on the education piece. I think that should happen off rip. That's just how I feel. But the other thing that I wanted to ask, or just reiterate, do you feel like there should be more like regulations with regard to keeping it safe? Because from what you're telling me and from what is in the bill, we're talking about green spaces, we're talking about all of this. You have a certain way you would do things, but I just want to know from you, would you be opposed to better language to make that safe? Would you be opposed to that? And I don't know what that language looks like,
No.
but I just wanted to know.
No, ma'am, I would not be opposed to it. Like I said, I come from the commercial market. I never was in the black market or anything like that. I come from the commercial market where, you know, you got to have keypads to get into everything. You're in scrubs, you know, the full shebang. So yes, I believe that it should be safe. I pray that, you know, people aren't running into people's houses, you know, and trying to, you know, steal their stuff. I hope that everybody just kind of, you know, does it for themselves. You know, but that's wishful thinking. But yes, I do feel like either put a lock on it, or, you know, a keypad, or, you know, something that's, you know, secured. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Humphrey. Representative White.
Thank you, Chairman Edwards. Thank you, sir, for coming in.
Yes,
and,
ma'am.
you know, I applaud you for your craft, you know, your craftsmanship. You are someone who is in the industry,
Yes, ma'am.
has experience, has been waiting for this day, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so I want to separate out, because, you know, you mentioned your social media and all of that. I'm
Yes, ma'am.
certain you have a lot of colleagues. Your world is probably, you're talking to a lot of people in the same space.
Yes, ma'am.
And so there's individuals like yourself, and then there are individuals, you know, looking at the state of Ohio as a whole.
Yes, ma'am.
And so the state of Ohio voted for adult use.
Correct.
And we want to be respectful of that. They
Correct.
voted for home grow. And
Correct.
we want to be respectful of the principle of home grow. My question for you, because we already know the issues separating the adult use and the teen use, right? Or the underage use, you know, college age or whatever. We already know we have a proliferation of problems with alcohol in this state, proliferation of impaired driving. We already know that we have issues with lots of kids jumping in the car and going to Michigan or other states, or having a older family member, colleague, getting them product, and they're using it regularly. I mean, I talk to kids all the time. I talk to young people. I talk college age, young adults. So, we know from surveys in Ohio, 59% of students who've used marijuana have done so before the age of 15, and 7% of the 7 to 12 graders said they used it in the last 30 days, all right? So we already have at least 7%. Those are those who identified that they've done it. Plenty more have, okay? Right. They're using it. So my question to you is, with home grow, certainly people like yourself are highly responsible. If you're allowed to grow it, how do we prevent the proliferation of people that don't have the same intentions as you? Correct. That what we're going to see is a lot more access in the neighborhoods, in the community for young people. Certainly, they're still going to get friends to buy it from the legal stores. But just in terms of how do we safeguard, so that we don't have so much volume out there. And I get that it's hard to grow, just like we all know craft brewery people who have, they're doing beer in their basements and whatnot. You got to spend a lot of time and energy to make it work. But how do we protect, knowing we already have use? And again, we have a lot, there's a lot of data out there, the medical uses, there's adults who want to use. But we can all agree that there's so much research out there on the developing brain, the impact on young people and how it impairs them.
Correct.
And we already have so many kids struggling with mental health and substance misuse issues. What's the solution here? As you look at home grow from the eyes of the general community, not the people like you who have the high skill and are going to do it right.
So I'm kind of glad that you asked me that question. So I actually recently started a business. And it's to help people and teach them how to grow inside their house. Basically, teaching them my commercial skills going towards the home grow. And one thing from posting in, other groups, and stuff like that, and people that I've talked to, the one thing that comes up quite a bit is the kids. I think number one, it kind of starts at home. Like I said, I'm a med patient myself. And I have four kids at my house. I'm not going to say that I leave my stuff out, but there may be times where I step away or something like that. And I can tell you my kids would never, ever touch it. Kind of the same thing with, like, if they see, like, if I have, like, a Bud Light or anything like that set out, I can tell you that they would never touch it. I think the first thing I think is important, number one, is that, it starts at home. Like, the parents have to be responsible, and as a whole, we have to make the parents responsible for their children. I think secondly, I think there was tax money going to addiction, cannabis addiction. I think that's very imperative that we keep that input. I know HB 86 was trying to take a lot of those provisions away, and I think what ends up happening is people don't really understand that there's help out there. Parents don't understand that they have kids that are dealing with, things like that, that there's help out there. I have kids that are on, their severely ADHD and IEP programs, and I never knew that, there was programs through the school that we could, go to get help. So maybe if there was, I believe they took cannabis out of DARE, but maybe there can be a program or money that goes towards the schools that can educate these kids on, listen, if this is what you do, these are the consequences that come with it. So I think a lot of that, if we want to talk about, how do we keep it safe? Number one, it has to start with the parents. The parents have to be responsible individuals and let their kids know that it's not okay. And if they're struggling with mental health or anything like that, seek out that help. But I'm a big proponent with the tax money going back to the schools. I think that's very important. I know 86 was trying to give that to police and prisons and things like that, and it's more counterintuitive because it's the direct like prisons and police are the. I'm not saying that police are bad. I'm more saying putting money towards that coming from cannabis, it seems kind of counterintuitive. The whole bill is trying to, get people expunged out of jail. They're trying to help people, get clean records, and it's kind of counterintuitive to that point. I think it's very important, super important, that money goes back to our kids and our education and being able to, have programs in place if there are kids that are struggling with those kind of, addictions, whether it be alcohol or, there are kids stuck on prescription pills or marijuana. Like I said, my kids are very educated about it, even at their young age. They understand that this is my medicine and you are to never touch it. And I wholeheartedly believe that with programs in place and responsible parents, that's something that can definitely be edged out. But money going back to the schools to create programs for those kind of kids, I think is something that's important.
Thank you. Follow up?
Quickly, Chair and Sir. So I like what you said, and in terms of the education, and we spend so much money and time on the back end in this state fixing problems, as opposed to proactive prevention. So what you said about the schools, preventing, giving people the tools they need to do things right, education, as Rep. Humphrey was mentioning, because we know investment in prevention saves like $13 per dollar on the back end. So I guess what I would, just to ask you, those in the community that that aren't in the industry, that don't, what are you hearing from them about what they're going to do and where they're going to get it? Do you hear a lot of people outside of your field talking about wanting to do home grow, or do you more think most people are going to go for just buying it in the store?
That's kind of a tough one. Cultivators like me, like that are involved in the industry every day, they're most likely going to home grow for themselves just because it's a way to, practice your craft. That's how I'm going to use it, really. I don't think there's going to be a big explosion of home grows. I can tell you from like the people that I've spoken with thus far that have contacted me about getting consultation and stuff like that, a lot of people are still afraid to do it, even though it's legal. A lot of people are afraid to, even have the 6 plants, to be quite honest with you. I can show you messages on my phone where, people say, I only want to do 3, I only want to do, 6. Most people starting out, 12 is a lot of plants to even manage. It's a very time consuming thing, and I just want everybody up here to understand that it's very time consuming. And if you're not there all the time, or if you don't spend thousands of dollars on being able to automate your feed and water and stuff like that, it's not something that's cheap, number one, and it's not something that like the regular person is going to get into, just because it's not easy. It's not easy whatsoever.
Yep.
Chair and Sir.
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, and so then if you think most of the people growing it are going to be people who kind of know what they're doing, or that are going to grow more plants, what are you going to do with the surplus then? Because if you know what you're doing, you're going to have a lot more production.
Correct.
So the bill doesn't allow for much with that. What's going to happen to that plant material?
So if you were to ask me on a personal, honest level, I would ask, that we're able to give to family and friends and things of that. I know that's not in the bill, but I can tell you that people that know me, they would much rather get it from me than the store. I know there's a huge processing issue with being able to get material. I guess this kind of goes back to like a craft license. Give us the ability to test. Give us the ability to, if there's a craft or a processor that can't receive material, are we allowed to take it there? There's just really not a lot of options available, like you say, for the surplus. It's just, again, it kind of creates the black market in a way, because now you have, people are sitting on all this kind of product. And I can tell you, I can't smoke a pound myself. It's just not possible, right? So I think that goes back more towards my point. If we have more provisions set in place to where we can actually, you never know. People may want to get into the industry. People may, want to give it to a processor or what it is. But right now, the language honestly just kind of allows for you just to sit on it.
Thank you, Representative White. Moving past Representative Thomas, go to Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want to say you're very articulate. Thank you so much for your testimony. I'm learning a lot by listening to you. My question is it basically a moot point to debate how many plants we can grow? Because as I listen, I'm like, who is actually going to walk into your closet, into your basement, and go, oh, you have 6 plants, oh, you have 12 plants. How does that work? And the second part of my question is, I'm a mother of 3, and they're grown now. And when they were younger, they were a lot easier to manage, and they're good people, trust me. But adolescents, I'm talking about those younger ages, 13 to about 16 or so. It's very hard to supervise them, and I just, I think about opportunities for the black market as well, where there's access in a home, and then those things end up with friends or sold to someone else. So those are my 2 concerns, and I'm hoping you can help me here.
All right. So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. So the first question was about the mute point about plant count.
Yes, please.
So I wanted to be very careful, about what I said, but I think plant count is a very mute point. Just because if you understand anything about growing and you really know what you're doing, I can get the same amount off of 6 plants that I can get on 12 plants. Right? There's a lot of bending and training that you can do. You can sways, there's a lot of things that you can do to be able to get more weight off of it, add CO2, bigger lights, things of that sort. So to me, the plant count thing, as it sounds good, I think it's a very mute point. Whether somebody's growing, 50 plants, they have it to where they have a tier system now, to where like you can get a rack, and then these plants are only this big, and they're growing 50 of them, and you can get the same amount off of 20 plants. So to me, it's kind of a mute point. I understand why it's inside the bill. It kind of is what it is. I understand the safety aspect of it, and people not wanting the black market to be exploded. And then going back to your second point about 13, 14-year-old kids. Again, to me, it's really up to the parents. It's really up to kind of the parents to educate the kids on what they're actually getting into and the consequences of that. But I think, as and as kids grow up, kids are going to rebel. There are going to be high school parties where there's alcohol and cannabis involved. And I think the best thing we can do is, number one, give the money back to the school so they can educate the kids. And then secondly, the parents just have to be responsible and, telling their kids, hey, don't drink and drive. If you smoke weed at this age, this is what it can do to your brain. I think those are 2 very important parts. If there's anything outside of that, I really don't have a solution. I just know what I do inside my own household. And like I said, my 9 and 6-year-olds are very educated on, what it is. They should not touch it, things like that. So.
Thank you for being a responsible parent, and no further questions.
Thank you, Representative Richardson. Representative Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. I apologize I came in a little late when you were talking, and I hope I don't ask the question that you've talked about. But can you walk me through? I'm interested how you home grow. So I'm assuming that when you do this, it's like a hot lamp, or there's some lamps that you use that produce heat to help the plant grow. Is that correct?
So
can you walk me through what is the setup to grow a plant?
So your usual setup, you would like for your small 4x4 tent, which is like the most basic tent probably everybody's gonna probably purchase when they first start. You're gonna have a light. Most people are moving towards LEDs just because they consume less power and they produce less heat.
So that's what I want to get to, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask that follow-up. That's the part. I know this is maybe odd, but do you? in theory, before it was legal, let's say you did grow at home, did you recognize any significant increase in electric costs? I'm trying to understand our electric grid. What will it do to our electric grid? Will it increase our generation capacity, our demand capacities? Do people realize how much money it would cost? Like, is it a huge spike in electric costs to do it at home?
Theoretically, if you were to ask me, it does not.
Okay.
It does not.
So no significant
No,
costs.
those LEDs draw. Some of them are 645 watts, 1,000 watts, whatever you may be. But what they're actually drawing is most likely less than that. And then on top of that, you have cycles. So your PPFDs, which is how much light the plant is actually getting, they're gonna be lower and higher through certain points of the plant cycle. So, vegetative stage, your lights, how much energy it's actually using is gonna be way lower. Your flowering stage, you're gonna have the lights pumped up to, maximum. But no, it does not.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask that question, Mr. Chairman, because I certainly think we are not ready for everyone to have electric cars. And I'm just trying to understand, are we ready for what is coming when it comes to our electric grid and people growing at home, and what does that cause? So just trying to educate myself on that. Thank you very much.
Never thought a marijuana bill would need to go through Public Utilities Committee here. Legislature. Any other questions for the witness?
Can I say one more thing on that point? It honestly depends on the setup and how you have it set up, and really how many lights you're actually using. But it's honestly, unless you have like a really big, you're doing something super illegal, you're not gonna see much power consumption.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, I just want to commend you on coming down here, regardless of whether you're, the small business idea. First off, I think it sparked a lot of thought in me, and I'm sure most members up here. Whether that gets into this bill or not, please keep your presence down here. Do you live in Central Ohio?
I live in Springboro.
Springboro, so a little ways away.
I don't mind driving though.
But we need more people like you down here educating members. We understand small businesses aren't the ones that you typically have lobbyists and people around here representing them. Your presence here and being in members' offices and in front of committees educating people is really a good thing, and we need more activism like that. So thank you very much for being here. I thought you did a great job today.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you for your testimony. We're going to move on to Kenny Schweikert. Kenny, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just found out a couple days ago that I was the first person that was born in 1970 to be issued a Social Security number in the whole country. Now people are laughing at home or whatnot and say, what does that matter? It really doesn't, but I'm trying to just make it seem like my opinion might matter more. I also thought about, being a guinea pig and seeing the medical marijuana effects on stage fright before I came in, but I decided not to. But I'll tell you, for me, it's more of a relaxant, but other people, there's like, their brain's firing. I don't see it like alcohol at all. I really don't. You have these breweries open up and all this stuff for, this booming alcohol business in the state of Ohio. But it doesn't mean we add more law enforcement to that, And there's lots of things that I know. The campaign for issue 2 is they said, just like alcohol, they're talking about the regulation of it, But to me, as a layman, just looking from the outside in, which I've been kind of a spectator. I used to be really involved with that stuff. I'll get to that in a minute. But it just seemed like it was a little bit odd. I didn't want people to think it was really like alcohol. Their website, justlikealcohol.com, they're talking about the regulation, but people didn't really see it that way when they're looking in and trying to learn about it for the first time. If they have no exposure to it, and I would just want to make sure it's not like alcohol. It's not. Scientifically, there's no crime that, it's just so not like alcohol. I mean, I've been arguing about that for years, like why it's not like alcohol, So I'm really glad to be here today and talking standing up, right? Because I was here at the Rotunda floor during the affirmative defense in the 90s, laying on the Rotunda floor at the closure of it, when, we had weeks and weeks of testimony, and we're defeated, and it was like the last day of it. And that's not what I intended to do that day. That's a whole nother story, but I did kind of give a testimony on the floor without a witness slip. So I'm happy to be able to do that. And affirmative defense back then, I mean, it was like we'd pack the hearings every week, and then we didn't know if there was going to be another one for the next week. So every time we just didn't know how long it was going to go on. So I was the guy out there like passing out flyers and trying to get people to show up in the next hearing, keep this thing going. And then just like extending for a week and after a week, and then, that lasts for like a month or something like that. But ultimately we were defeated. I was pulling people off the bus. We had one of our best patient spokespeople like come off the COTA bus when we were out protesting on the corner. And that was a really, I was kind of angry, antagonistic. This is much different. It's like joyous, very bittersweet. I don't feel like I'm fighting anybody. I'm just working with you, and that's really, really refreshing. I didn't like stay up all night looking where your campaign contributions came from like I did back then. There's a value of patience, and a lot of them, when it comes to growing, they can't. 6 plants to them, either, I don't know how many 6 would make it. They might take a tray of 20. It's like, it depends on the level of how bad of a patient they are, condition-wise. The real debilitating ones, and they need this plant more, the more of the conditions they have, which the medical board would have access to that, I think, which is a great resource to have that I'll bring up in a minute. Because these people that can't serve themselves, I like that to be added in to the Department of Development that's been set up, right? That's already in the bill that's in the Legislative Service Committee. That's the one I'm going on. There's been no changes. Technically, that's the effective one now, okay? So I know there's like drafts, calendars draft, and people talking about this and that and stuff. I'm just going with what's filed at the Legislative Service Commission, and that version, it had the Director of Development, kind of like orchestrating the social justice category in Ohio. The ORC was 3780.19, right? So what I want to do is I want to take that clause, that line, wherever I said 3780.19. Is that right? I pulled that one out of my hat there. I'd be surprised if it's right. It might be a little wrong. But also nonprofit organizations that haven't been talked about, ones that are in the related field. At first, I was thinking, well, man, the people who fought for years and, were so influential to ending prohibition, they should have a right to do this. But then, it really belongs to everybody, all the nonprofit groups, all the related fields, and it could help them a lot. Even the legal aid people, they're doing expungements. The ACLU, they should be able to qualify if they choose to have a chance to get a license, which, when we're talking about numbers and licenses, all this, local control. Let the locals say, well, how many licenses can we do with the nonprofit, and orchestrate some kind of bidding process and coordinate with the Director of Development, right? And the patient cooperative, I have kind of a rough draft procedure in mind, like how that would work, and maybe that can help out the standalone processors that have been hurting right now, that, or anyone that's kind of struggling, the people who are growing the CBD, those would be good prospects to consider for participating in the patient cooperative, right? And so roughly it would be, X amount of patients per X amount of square feet, and then have it administered and managed by one of these business interests that can deal with it. If it's too much to handle, maybe bring in the Ohio Nurses Association. See if each cooperative wants a nurse rep. and then we can actually get it going on because the processors, they already got the facilities. We're not talking about a whole lot of square feet, just a little boutique stuff for the patients that can't grow it, So between that and the nonprofit organizations, I think it's really important. So please consider that. It's kind of left out of the whole mix. Very important because the patients are first. I mean, I know we have full legal, but I was never in favor of legal. Like I was against the 2015 effort. I was concerned about what it would do to patients. And they were telling us, oh, it'll help them. But then, have the monopoly and all that. I'm like, and I didn't believe them when they said we'll never get another chance. And I was right. So it's turned around and they've formed the medical board process, which I'm very thankful for. So I'm not mad at them at all. I feel like they're allies. And I'm very appreciative because without that, then we wouldn't have where we're at today. It takes everybody, an evolution of, all the pieces of the puzzle, all the spokes in the wheel that make the wheel turn. There's lots of credit to be going around. And the same for the blame, right? Now, when we're talking about, the funds for law enforcement, it kind of, I see what you're saying, but how it's divvied up with the percentages and stuff. First of all, the percentages, having them written like that, without knowing where we're at, without knowing the priorities of what needs to be funded. Wait until we hear about these ideas and then figure out where to prioritize the percentages. And then some don't have percentages and there's money, like $15 million for the experiment. How do they calculate that? And we're starting to promise money and commitments and percentage figures. And we don't even know how much money we have. It's not fiscally conservative. Find out, let's have a review period after everything's running, see where we're at financially, see what the priorities are, because as we collect information, more information, we learn about things, and that's important for decision making. Weigh out pros and cons after you collect all the information possible, which is going to take some time, and then prioritize. And law enforcement, okay, if you have to do law enforcement, okay, then maybe have them use that category to stimulate dialogue of why we shouldn't be using jails anymore. At the big picture of the condition of human free will. Humans should not be putting other humans in cages. It's not befitting of an advanced species. Can you imagine if somebody who was looking back or came back, someone who was not human or whatever, just theoretically, okay, who looked at us, anyone who wanted to gauge what we're like in a quick manner, how would someone quickly gauge what human beings are like? They would want to know, are we the type of people that use cages on one another? We got to stop using cages. So how we do that, we open the dialogue. Now, I'm not talking about release everybody today. It'll be a transition period, which starts with dialogue. So see if we can get law enforcement to start dialoguing about how to not use cages anymore. As far as the finance of prison industry, way up. You're going to need more space, more land mass. You're going to need more social workers and hire a lot more people. It's not going to be such an impersonal, warehouse livestock type of situation, which it's cruel and it's sick. Let's help these people. Let's stop the recidivism. In and out. They get out, they learn more crime. In jail, they get out and commit more. It's just like it's ongoing, da-da-da. You want to build more prisons, da-da-da-da-da. It's got to stop. Like Europe. It's not like I'm pulling this out of the blue nowhere. We have examples. They have models in Europe we can look at. But the dialogue needs to start. This whole humans not putting humans in cages. It's like one of the tenets of what's wrong with free will, because of what goes on there after that. And some other things like severe hunger, short-term thinking instead of long-term, misinformation, negative assumptions, not understanding energy frequency, vibration, and the principles of connectivity, where one person's problem on the other side of the world actually is everybody's problem. These are fixable. Fixable. You know, negative assumptions, anybody can do that at home, run for the family, make a game of it. Count how many negative assumptions you make during the day. Have a contest. You'll quickly notice how they reduce and how their lives will all of a sudden be positive in all the interactions. Easy. Anybody can do it. Let's start working on fixing the 7 core tenets of where free will has gone wrong so we can prove its worthiness, and we'd have a chance at this most pressing time to advance our species to become who we can be, to fulfill our potential, which has never been fulfilled. Because, you know, I bet the humans put in other cages probably predated war. Think about it. You know? So I'd like to see the dialogue open. If you're going to have money for law enforcement, let's open up the dialogue so we can have a different way of doing things. Because I want people to look back, future generations, and look back at our era, the 20s, our roaring 20s, right? Turning point. We're the ones that are getting it right, or are the ones that just messed it up for everybody forever? You know, it's an opportunity. And this bill is an opportunity. And speaking of that, like, I started off my whole cannabis activism stuff with an initiative, an initiated statute. People are like, well, why don't you do a constitutional amendment? And I was like, well, it's too wordy. You know, I don't want to bog down the Constitution like that. And I like the flexibility of the initiated statute process because, as you see, we can take a bill and make it better because information changes, times change, you know. And sure enough, that happened. You know, now when RO came along, the 2015 effort, I was like, wow, you're going to put this much paperwork in the Constitution.
Can we get to the House Bill 3, the House Bill, what we're testifying here today? And,
yes,
and not
I would
much
like
of the history?
I would like to have the inclusion into the clause of the social equity thing of adding nonprofit organizations and patient cooperatives. Okay, and then I can help put that together, send you like more of a concrete detail. I only sent you an outline on my witness testimony, but there's mechanics of that I'll be more than happy to help out with. So we can protect patients, help bail out the standalone processors that are having a hard time. And the hemp issue, just real quick, brief, and thanks for just a little bit more. The environmental utilitarian aspects of hemp have been lost in here. You know, the plywood, the stopping deforestation, the 25,000 at least products to compete, to stop fossil fuels, you know, to reignite the textile industry, graphene. You know, you talk Intel, we got this big Intel thing, and the best graphene can come from hemp bast fiber. We need economic stimulus. You know, the people who are complaining about they're growing for flour, let's get them growing the stalks. Let's have an economic source of money, the stimulus for the environmental utilitarian aspects of hemp. And the definitions are right. It's kind of goofy. You look up the dictionary, it's cannabis hemp. There's no difference. Back in the 90s, there was an executive order by Bill Clinton that had, they call it true hemp. You know, and that was to distinguishment. Because there are different types of plants. And, you know, the capital flow went all into the flower, you know, but I think they would go ahead and start growing these other things, which is a multi-billion-dollar deal, especially graphene. And I'm not talking about for like, you know, the uses I'm interested in is to filter out industrial wastewater, you know, to take the CO2 out of the air. These are incredible uses for graphene. We can desalinate the oceans. I mean, it's just amazing.
Thank you, Mr. Schweikert, for your testimony. Do we have questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. We are now going to move on to Ali Bazi. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Ali's not here. Okay. We're going to move on to Amy Elwood. Amy's not here. We're going to move on to Ali Reeves. Allie, welcome to committee. The floor is yours.
First, I just want to say thank you to God for me making it to Columbus again for a second time. Once I tell my story, you understand why I said that. Also, I want to thank all of you for allowing me to come here and testify. I'm not here to bash either bill. I'm just basically here to state what I've done in the industry since May 2017, because I feel it's important, me being a small business owner and creating ancillary companies to truly support the Ohio cannabis industry. Excuse me if I'm nervous. This has been like a long time coming. I've testified before for Senate Bill 9. That was my first chance to be able to speak my piece. But this one is a little bit more important to me because I've worked and sacrificed and endured so much being one of the first. So I began my actual cannabis journey back in May 2017 as the admissions officer for the Cleveland School of Cannabis. The owner and Austin Briggs, the man that was before you today talking about that school, he's right. If it wasn't for him, the industry would be in shambles. I'm born and raised from Cleveland. I saw what he was doing. I got an opportunity and I ran with it. And my job was to enroll students into that school. I've enrolled so many people in the state of Ohio. I was there for 2.5 years. I worked crazy and that's how I built my network. I was able to enroll 40 or more students by October of 2017, right before they received the state approval. And at that point, I decided to build my small business, Midwest Canna Women, because there needed to be a place for people to come gain information and resources. I worked and built that company with 2 amazing women. One, her name is Christine DeJesus. She's right now the GM at Galena's Cultivation, based in Akron. And another was a student that also worked for the industry. Her name was Mia Blanker-Reed. I wanted to become a nonprofit, but I was like, nah, the laws are too crazy when it comes to cannabis, so I chose to stay a small business. But I started to network, connect different businesses. Back then, there was no licenses issued, so a lot of people were just trying to find information. So I started to create projects that were approved by the Board of Pharmacy and the Department of Commerce so that licensed operators and the community can come together to learn about each other. While working at the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Throughout my journey, I've enrolled owners, I've enrolled C-level suite positions, I've enrolled everybody that wanted to learn and actually utilize cannabis education to do either business or to actually gain employment. With my company, my focus, me being a black woman from Cleveland, was to advocate for minorities and all women. I didn't want to separate that part because all women deal with the same thing. We all voted the same year. So throughout my journey, I was there at CSC for 2.5 years. I enrolled over 92% of their student body. I helped enroll for Cleveland. They had a Columbus location. I enrolled there. I was here at Columbus a lot early on, and also their online platform. I resigned to take another role as a community outreach coordinator for GTI dispensaries in Ohio called RISE. So I was blessed to be able to work so hard to have now a leadership role that's also something that lacks with the industry. And that's not just Ohio's industry, that's as a whole. Women and black women definitely don't get those opportunities. My job then, again, was to help connect patients to the medical industry and how they can get cards. But at the time, and still right now, it's illegal for them to work with both. So I was able to just go out and teach people. With my business, I still created, if you see my testimony I submitted, the first event I did was June 22nd, 2018. I did an outdoor event that was safe, and I brung out the entire state of Ohio. Tim and Wendy were there, and a lot of other people that were here early on were in attendance. State Rep Juanita Brent was in attendance as well. But people came out, and it was a very diverse look at what the industry could be. There were operators, there were doctors, there were community in Cleveland, it was everybody. People came from everywhere just to network outdoors. Nobody got killed. Nobody got hurt, and it was a great time. I provided free food because the farm there in Cleveland provides produce for the community, and they sell to different farmers markets. So I do that every single year. But in 2019, after Christine took her role as the Director of Cultivation for Galenas and Mia stepped out of the industry, I met Nicole Ross, owner and COO of Nor Labs, and then I met her sister, Naraya Ross. So at that time, we partnered up, and we started to work together because of the work that I was already doing in my community and the work she was doing in hers. So they both became, Nicole became my executive board advisor, her younger sister became my junior board executive advisor, and we started to create more projects to support the industry and the community to connect and learn from each other. It's been a great ride. The one focus that we focused on and created was a statewide expungement. We've done that now for 3 years. Next February 2024 will be our 4th year. We were given a resolution. If you look at the attachments, I've added that into there. Thank you, State Rep Juanita Brent, for acknowledging the work of trying to get people to expungement because it's not easy. If you look at my social impact report that I created on there, I've talked to a lot of people, but to get them over that threshold is very challenging because I put the accountability back on them. I tell them, if you want me to advocate for you, you have to follow up with me. I'm not a nonprofit, remember. I don't get referrals. I don't get grant money. I have to, bless you, do this on my own and create projects with people giving me sponsorship money to be able to put on things. So I don't make a lot of money. I give people deals all the time just because I want people to connect with me so I can create a pathway and an opportunity for the community to learn about the industry. So fast forwarding it to right now, 2023, I've had a couple roles. After I left GTI after 15 months, I stepped back out of the industry to work again for myself because I saw a need. My company has really been, what my name is, an ally to the actual industry. I love Ohio, I love Cleveland, and I love the cannabis industry, not because, you know, I'm a legal patient, but because I understand the severity of utilizing, I don't want to use the black market term, just utilizing products that are not tested. I am one of those ones that actually care about people and patients having access to tested products in the market because the industry has to survive and come first. That's why I stand with independent processors like Nor Labs, because I understand how hard it is and how challenging it is to sell products to the market. The last role that I just held, and I ended June 30th, was the sales director for Nor Labs. I've supported them since day one, and I was their sales director, which was great because I'm thinking I have so many relationships. I've helped GTI, I've worked with Curaleaf, I've worked with Cresco Labs, I've worked with Ancient Roots, I've worked with Nectar, I've worked with, you name them, bless you. I've worked with them. They've sponsored my events. They've helped me with my expungement clinics. They've helped me with my outdoor event. They've asked me to work with them to help get patients discounted patient cards. That's what I'm doing right now. I've done it. So the last thing I've created was called the Patient Comes First Tour. This is my final project right now. Again, changing my business to be an ally to the actual industry. I seen the drop in the patient count, which was like 6,000. But I've been on this tour going around to different cities. I went to Waverly, Ohio. I've been in Cleveland twice. And I just left Ashtabula, and I did 8 days out there. And I've been grateful to enroll over 101 patients in the last 4 months. I'm proud of that. These are not come and go patients. These are patients that constantly go to the dispensary because they need help. They need tested medicine, and they need to talk to people that are professionals that can understand what they need. I've been grateful to partner with a company called Relief Clinic to provide $50 visits. I'm so happy about this because not only do they get to come to my tour wherever I land and get a discounted patient visit, which some of those prices are like $300, which I think is completely ridiculous. They also get to come get resources that I have, which is I connect people to expungement resources for free. I work with the City of Cleveland officials, City Council President Blaine Griffin, Law Prosecutor Aquila Jordan with expungement clinics. I have a partnership with Legal Works. The owner is James Levin, and he gives the best deals ever. One guy I have, he has 5 misdemeanor charges. He charged him $100 to expunge his record. I also help people connect to the cannabis industry if they need employment, because I've worked with so many different owners and operators. And I also help people connect to different businesses, because I know a lot of small business owners are like myself, and they want in. A lot of them want to own dispensary, cultivation, processing licenses, and this social equity supposedly bill that's supposed to be out. And I'm trying to help them learn how they can actually have opportunity, but, you know, now I know that it's been removed, and that sucks, because I was here in 2017 when the bill of social equity first got removed because it was unconstitutional. So I'm not here to bash what Bill didn't do, but I'm here to ask why. Like, I'm out there working so hard. You know why you haven't seen me? Because I've been out in Ashtabula with the people, the patients. I help them do every single thing. They don't care about technology. They don't care about who brand is the best. A lot of these people at the end. I see some young people that just want to get high, sell the products illegally. I'll tell them not to, because I also expunge records. But I'm out there with people that need help. They walk in with oxygen machines. They got a flip phone. Kids won't help them. And I'm right there. I don't care. Let me do it. I've created emails. I've paid for people visits using my last money because I care. I've always cared. But we need a program. I'm not telling you you should listen to only me. You should listen to everybody that stood up here that's passionate, because one way or the other, it's not easy being in the industry. I'm a black woman from Cleveland. It's not easy for me. People say, you make it look, it's so hard. I have to be, you know, I cover my eyes. I'm so passionate, my eyes tell my truth. I defend everybody in Ohio, because we all got to work together. But we need a program. I'm tired. I have sacrificed everything and every single person because I believe in the bigger picture of Ohio having a lucrative program that people don't have to run to the border. They don't have to go to California anymore. They can stay right here. They want to. You want to ask me the questions you asked, Brandon? He's proof of me. I enrolled him into Cleveland School of Cannabis. And Rolanda Smith, I've known her since 5th grade. Me and her went to St. Benedict Elementary School together. I enrolled her into Cleveland School of Cannabis as well. It's a lot of students I've helped. Brandon had a high-level role for a cultivation facility. That's why he can speak so, I'm so proud of him. I haven't seen him in years. I know Kat Packer. I've watched her for years be amazing. I can't wait to talk to her after this, because I see her. I wanted to see her. Forget text, forget call. I'm one of those people. That's why I came here, not to cry, not to yell at you. I want to work with you. That's my ask. Can I work with you to create a social equity program? Can my friends, Nicole Ross, you've already got a taste of her. She called me and prepared me for today. She's amazing. She's my shero. She is, and she's younger than I am. But I love her dearly and her family. She should have a place too. All independent processors should have a place, but definitely her. So my ask is, can we create a group of people that have did the work in Ohio that has proof? Has proof. Check my Instagram page out, have a lot of proof there. To help you create something for us. The people need it, the industry need it. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Reeves. Questions for the witness? Representative Brandt.
Thanks, Chairman. From the chairman to the witness, thank you so much for coming and giving your testimony. It's so valuable in this space to talk about social equity. And regardless if we call it social equity or economic disadvantaged communities, we need to talk about bringing equity to this situation. So what do you think would be, and I was taking out notes as you were talking, what do you think would be the impact, and I need you to kind of explain that because not everybody's familiar with cannabis, of forming a social equity jobs fund for increasing accessibility?
You would change people's lives. I've done it already, just by connecting to different resources. Cleveland School of Cannabis, knowing different companies. I don't get a referral, so I just connect people to jobs. But a program would benefit because you'll be able to utilize some of that tax money to fund it. People in the community want to see those companies come support their communities. If they don't see them, they're not going to support it. So you're not going to make money anyway. They're going to continually to go other routes like they have because they see no value or nobody that supports them. So you have to create things just like every other industry. The medical industry here in the state of Ohio is thriving. You know why? They not only have employees, they have an opportunity for people to actually become entrepreneurs and own themselves. There's a lot of medical owners I know that have their own businesses where they're thriving and they don't have to, and they're hiring other people. So now they're creating more economic value and empowering their communities to be just like them. It needs to be the same with cannabis. It shouldn't be different.
Just real quick follow-up. If we had to come up with a group, and this is not a planned question, Chairman, or the people at home, so I don't want you to think that she and I talked about this question, but if we had a planned group, what would that group consist of? Who will be the different categories of people who will sit on a social equity board for the state of Ohio when it comes to cannabis?
I think it should be small business owners. I think it should be licensed operators. I think it should be activists. I think it should be advocates. I think it should be patients. I think it should be politicians. I think it should be a very diverse board, but I also think that it should be people that have proven themselves in Ohio and beyond. I definitely think Cat Packard should be a part of that.
Chairman, can the witness send something to the Finance Committee with those details? I appreciate it.
So
Thank
if
you,
you
Chairman.
send something to my office, I will disperse it to the rest of the committee.
Thank you.
We'll make sure we'll get you emails and where to send that to. Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Thank you again for being here, and thank you for your passionate testimony. Just a quick question for you. We are talking about social equity. We're talking about economically disadvantaged communities and all of that. One of the things I consistently hear you speak about is the expungement piece. And I think that I know I understand how impactful expungement can be with regard to some of the marijuana possession charges and all of that. But if you can explain to us, and really just for some of the viewers at home, because I think we may understand it as a body, but for folks at home, can you explain why the expungement process or the expungement piece is needed and how you've seen it be impactful in Cleveland and otherwise?
So, do statewide expungement? That's a great question. It gives people an even playing field to do business. It gives people an even playing field to gain employment. It gives people opportunity to gain housing. It's not just the poor communities that need records expunged. It's so many. I've talked to owners of cannabis companies that need their records expunged. It's hard because people don't like to follow up. it's hard because people don't know the information. They don't feel like it's achievable. They don't know the laws. They don't have a liaison. I know in Cleveland, while I'm working with them and partnering with them for the second time, it's because it's illegal for them to go out and get the 4,477 people that they've expunged minor cannabis charges. So they need to partner with an organization to be able to do that work for them. Like, that's what I'm doing. But I'm not a nonprofit. I'm a small business doing it. So it's different measurements. You know, I can't apply for funding, but I feel like if there was a program where companies can apply for funding, it'd be more people. I utilize the resources that I have, but if it was actually money being funded into that, then we could do more work. More people have more opportunities. That's how I feel. Sorry.
Thank you, Representative Humphrey. Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today.
All right, thank
We will now call on Kat Packer.
Good morning. Kat Packer. I'm the Director of Drug Markets and Legal Regulation for the Drug Policy Alliance. It's been a real pleasure to join you all the last couple of weeks to talk about these issues and opportunities to make sure that folks here in Ohio are moving forward with a cannabis program that's both responsible and equitable. What I appreciate in part about this process is when I was doing work with the city of Los Angeles, our public comment process, you got like 1 minute or 3 minutes. And I really do appreciate that this body is allowing folks to spend a little bit more time talking about their experiences. I spent time the last couple of days raising concerns about what I'm seeing being developed out of this legislature and conversations here in Ohio, and what I'm calling now this puff Police agenda, trying to utilize cannabis policy reform to do the exact opposite of what voters here in the state of Ohio asked for. Voters here in the state of Ohio asked for a cannabis social equity and jobs program and fund. They asked for the money to be dedicated back to specific purposes. And there was conversation this morning where folks are saying, we're really just trying to implement issue 2. But what I'm hearing out of this legislature, unfortunately, is not just an attempt to implement what's in issue 2, but to rewrite it, to change what was an integral part of this cannabis policy reform. Just want to use this as an opportunity to reiterate that Ohioans voted and decided to dedicate $0 to law enforcement. So any money that this body and this legislature would choose to dedicate to law enforcement explicitly would be in direct contradiction to what Ohio voters have asked for. I got started in cannabis policy reform right here in Ohio. I graduated from Ohio State University's law school in 2015, and in 2015 I had an opportunity to take a marijuana law and policy course. And this course was taught by Doug Berman, who's now the executive director of Ohio State's Drug Enforcement and Policy Center, where I am now a policy practitioner in residence. But in 2015, Ohio had folks who were trying to put both medical and adult use on the ballot. And I remember in 2015, at the time, only Colorado and Washington had passed their adult use cannabis initiatives. And while I was taking this class, I was also reading Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. And in her book, she articulated that nothing has contributed more to the systematic mass incarceration of people of color in the United States than the war on drugs. I would later go on to understand that about 50%, about half of all of the drug arrests were for marijuana in this country, and about 80% of marijuana arrests were for possession alone. And so when I learned that Ohio was getting ready to move forward, was trying to move forward with adult use and medical cannabis policy reform, and folks from the Responsible Ohio campaign came and spoke to my class, I remember leaving that class being very upset, in part because that initiative and the folks who were working with that campaign weren't talking at all about equity. I I remember having a conversation with my professor, Doug Berman, at the time, and I was just like, I don't really like what's happening, but I want to get involved. And he suggested that I go and work for this campaign. And I said, I don't know about working for the campaign. He said, well, you might learn a little bit if you go in on the inside. And so I worked for the Responsible Ohio campaign back in 2015. And what I learned from working on that campaign was how cannabis policy reform can create strange bedfellows, and how this was really going to be a conversation that centered around profit. And I know that the big contention about that particular reform was a monopoly. I want to mention now that I see the same thing developing here in the state of Ohio with this cannabis policy reform, only it's not the businesses that are going to have a monopoly, it's the cops. And they're going to have a monopoly on the profits. And I have real concern about that, in part because I've been looking at this for a while and waiting for the opportunity to come back to Ohio and do the good work, and particularly to talk about the racial disparities that exist here in Ohio. I would encourage, and I'll follow up to send this to this body, but ACLU did a report, and they've done several reports where they've looked at racial disparities across the country. And I just want to list a couple of statistics for you, because particularly when we're talking about dedicating money to law enforcement and particularly dedicating money to sheriffs, I want you all to know exactly the types of disparities you could be funding. So across Ohio, black people are 3.4 times more likely to be arrested. But what I appreciate about what ACLU did is that they actually looked at every single county. And I'll just list a few. In Jackson County, black people were 27.3 times more likely to be arrested. In Wayne County, 20.3 times more likely to be arrested. Let's see, where are we right now? In Shelby County, 13.2 times more likely to be arrested. Stark County, 5.5 times more likely to be arrested. Mercer, 75.3 times more likely to be arrested. Black and white and brown folks use cannabis, even sell cannabis, at the same rates. But what we've seen here in the state of Ohio, when we are funding enforcement, are racial disparities. And I have real concern that we're going to recreate this harm if we dedicate money back to law enforcement without any explicit restrictions. Again, I don't want to see Ohio move forward with this puff police agenda. I want to see Ohio fund the type of initiatives that the young woman who was standing before me. I mean, I can't imagine that we don't have other issues here in the state of Ohio that need resourcing. Is there not poverty in the state of Ohio? Is there not unemployment in the state of Ohio? Is there not housing insecurity in the state of Ohio? Do we not have food insecurity in the state of Ohio? Do we not have health disparities in the state of Ohio? Is our only solution to fund law enforcement? Even yesterday, a young man had suggested, well, why don't we dedicate some of the money towards the children? And I was disappointed that one of the responses from a member of this body was, well, what about school safety? Another means to try and get law enforcement funding. And it's like, even when we're talking about youth and dedicating money to children, we still can't get the cops out of this. And I don't say this because I don't like law enforcement. I worked closely with law enforcement when I was a regulator in the city of Los Angeles. I worked very closely with our local and state law enforcement. But to sit here and act like, one, there aren't other needs in the state of Ohio, and two, that Ohio voters weren't very clear in voting for issue 2 with the types of things that they wanted their resources to be dedicated to, I think would be a gross injustice. And I want you all to know that folks are paying attention. And I know that this is going to be something that's an iterative process. I know that all of the decisions aren't going to be made today. But to that end, I don't necessarily understand why we need to immediately change the tax rate or immediately change the tax structure. This is something that you all can take on a year from now. This is something that you all can take on 2 years from now. Can we not stand to have a year or two where the money is dedicated exactly how Ohio voters asked? Or are we just going to immediately say that we don't care about Ohio voters and their choices to dedicate money towards things like cannabis, their social equity program? The last thing I'll note here is that there's a real need for education. I think that a lot of the questions that have been asked by this body indicate a need for education, and not just education of the legislature, but education for the public. One of the things that I think we got wrong in the city of Los Angeles, and that I've seen other jurisdictions get wrong, is that they start their adult use programs and there isn't a funded educational effort to educate folks about what the different public health implications are of adult use cannabis, or what the different legal implications are of adult use cannabis. We keep having all this conversation about law enforcement and specific penalties that could be imposed against individuals, and I wonder, has anyone done the work to educate folks about what these new penalties mean? How are folks supposed to know if there's not an educational effort? We have an opportunity to launch a public education campaign so that it's very clear, so that folks understand, what responsible use looks like. I know that there's a concern, for example, about youth having access to cannabis. Why can't we fund a youth education program? There's concerns about impaired driving. Why can't we launch a campaign to talk about why that would be harmful? I think that when we talk about this enforcement conversation, we also have to recognize that education really needs to be the start of any type of enforcement strategy, and that again, there are tools outside of criminal penalties that we can use to move this conversation forward. I'll stop there. I know that this won't be the last time that I'm before this body, but really do appreciate the opportunity to spend just a little bit more time with you all, and again encourage you all not to move forward with a puff police agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Kat, once again for being here. I'm going to be quick because I do have to go, but my question for you is, as it relates to the hearing that I was a part of last week, we heard from President Carfagna, who is one of the vice presidents at the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. We were talking specifically about testing because we know, as it stands right now, we don't know if you get tested right now. It just shows, look, you have been using marijuana at some point. Don't say whether you used it, last night, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, 2 days ago. It just says that, you had used marijuana. So my question to you is about testing specifically, and how do we get modernized testing? One of the things that President Carfagna brought up was possibly, and I know I might get some pushback from this, but this is a part of my job to ask questions. And one of the things that he said was, from the revenue, some of that could be allocated to law enforcement because so that they could have advanced testing. Because what I don't want, and that's in part why I agree with him last week, is what I don't want is when people of color or people from lower socioeconomic statuses are pulled over, because we understand that in some cases there are some biases. No matter how you put it, it is what it is. I don't want those people to be discriminated against. And so in a sense, I agree with him, because we throw it back in your court specifically as it relates to modernizing technology. So my question to you is, where, because we need to have advanced technology, where do you think that funding should go to, or where should it come from, I guess is my question. If you don't like law enforcement, we know we need to get a process here. Where do you think that funding should go?
Chair, and thank you for the question. What I'll articulate first is that the practice that law enforcement use in the field today is through the use of drug recognition experts, and there are a series of essentially field sobriety tests that officers conduct on the road to do that type of testing. And so I don't want to sit here and suggest that there aren't mechanisms for law enforcement today to pull someone over and identify that they're driving impaired, even when it is for cannabis. There's specific training that drug recognition experts go through to be able to do that exact thing. It's not so much, I don't think that throwing money at technology is going to get us there. I think Ohio should join the other 23 states that have passed adult use programs, even states that have medical programs, and begin to work in conjunction with them, because there are other states that are dedicating resources. But what I can tell you is that we shouldn't expect law enforcement to be scientists in this space. If we were really trying to get at modernizing technology, I would much prefer and think it would be much more effective to dedicate money towards something like a research university than to dedicate money to law enforcement to find a solution. I have real concern about some of the technology that's being used to date. For example, there's a technology that folks have been using to do hair tests, particularly for folks in the trucking industry. And when there were other folks who had an opportunity to look at these hair follicle tests and the technology that folks were using for this, they learned that darker pigmented hair follicles would test positive more often. And so there had been this natural bias built into the technology that folks weren't accounting for. And so for that particular question, I'd be dedicating resources to a research university, someone who has specific science background. I think it would be biased to hand that money to law enforcement.
Thank you, Representative Humphrey. Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your thoughtful testimony. As I've listened to you, there's two things that have come to my mind. The first is, I think throughout the state of Ohio, actually throughout the nation now, we are concerned about school safety. So I'm just wondering if you've possibly made an assumption about that issue that was brought up yesterday, and perhaps we're looking at physical security and every possible means to protect our kids. And we're looking for more funding. I chair the Finance Subcommittee for Education, so I'm being very sincere about that. It's an expense we want to address. Could you please comment on that?
Yeah, and thank you, Chair. I appreciate the question. I share your concern and want schools all across America to be safe, right? I think we need to ensure that there is school safety. And what I'll articulate is that I know that a lot of legislatures across the country see cannabis tax revenue as a means to solve problems. But in the grand scheme of things, even for a state like Colorado, for example, that's been collecting millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for years now, that money only represents about 1% of their overall state budget, right? And so folks are having to be very intentional about how they try and dedicate those resources because it's not going to solve hunger. It's not going to solve a housing crisis. And there are specific consequences associated with a shift in cannabis policy reform. So my recommendation, the things that I've seen most effective, is that when there is this direct nexus to this current shift in cannabis policy reform, there are going to be outcomes, associated. There are going to be health outcomes associated with this. There are going to be legal outcomes associated with this. There are going to be economic outcomes. And if we're not thinking about how to use those resources to address those specific outcomes, then folks are going to look back on this and say, oh, well, see that cannabis issue, it caused this issue and it caused that issue, and we can actually get ahead of that by thinking a little bit more intentionally about where we dedicate those dollars. My concern generally is that it seems like there are folks in this legislature who have already made up their mind that the money is going to law enforcement, and folks are just trying to figure out what the title or the subcategory is. But again, want to articulate that I stand in full support of making sure that our students and children here in the state of Ohio are safe.
Well, thank you for that follow-up, Chairman.
Follow-up?
As I listen to you and I think about outcomes, and we look across the nation and in different states that have had legalized cannabis use, I think we all will agree that impaired driving is a concern. So when we think about that being an outcome and funding law enforcement, I think we need to factor that in. And I'll just say one other thing. When we think about funding law enforcement here, we're also, and what we're discussing is law enforcement training. So part of that training, we can really incorporate the training they need to understand this industry. And I just wanted the opportunity to share that with you and to share another perspective about law enforcement training. And I don't know if you want to comment on that or not. It's just my thought about that. It's not necessarily a question.
Well, thank you. And I will respond because I love the opportunity to.
Yes.
I think that if we're going to, I'll say that because of the way that the issue 2 was written and 36% of the money was supposed to be going back to communities, local communities, I think that those funds, local communities could choose to use those very funds for things like law enforcement training. But I think that if you all are going to choose to dedicate money towards law enforcement in contradiction to what specifically voters asked for, then I would be asking that this body ensure that those resources have some parameters so that we're able to track and ensure that we're not funding the same types of, if we're going to do training, well, let's do training on how to eliminate racial disparities. Let's ensure that we're tracking every single violation that a county sheriff's office is going to impose as a part of this program so that we can understand the same types of disparities that I articulated that ACLU was able to do. I'm not saying that it is always inappropriate. I'm just saying that it is in contradiction to what the voters asked for.
Thank you, Representative Richardson. Representative Brent.
Thanks, Chairman, from the Chairman to the witness. Thank you again. This is my third time hearing you talk about this. I want to particularly just kind of deep dive, particularly into the public education portion of it, and just kind of really having a better understanding of what would the framework look like for public education. I was kind of looking up some information while you were talking from some different places, even our neighbors to the north. They have a whole department that just deals with public education from Canada, where they have public education activities, and they do it from a public health approach from Canada. We also have Colorado, which they put it underneath their Department of Education, kind of referencing to my colleague who just brought up about her being on a subcommittee for primary education. And then also New York has their Why Buy Legal New York program. So as I'm looking through all of this, because I'm looking through all the states, because I'm going to send this to my colleagues, I'm going to send it to the chair, who's going to send it to the rest of the finance committee off of what other states are doing. What do you think give us some details. What do you think we should be doing when it comes to public education, and who could we reference as of who Ohio can emulate? Because we never like to be the first on anything. We always like to be somewhere in the middle. So who would be a good state to reference, or parts of another state's public education?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I'll follow up directly with this body to provide specific examples of public education campaigns that I've seen across the country. I like what Colorado has done in terms of their educational campaign, and really I've enjoyed what New York has done with their public information campaign. I do think that there are these different categories of stakeholders and issues that there need to be education around. I think that there needs to be a specific campaign dedicated to different health implications associated with cannabis use. And even within that, that can be stratified. So I do think that there needs to be specific health education around, for example, youth and pregnant women, other vulnerable communities. There would need to be an education campaign around impaired driving. I do think that we're at a point in time in this country, in the state of Ohio, where it's appropriate for us to update the type of drug education, cannabis education that happens in schools. Figuring out exactly where that should start. I just recently did a panel for Ohio State's Higher Education Substance Abuse and Treatment Center, and they're part of a network of higher education institutions across the country, and it dawned on me that many of these college campuses and universities don't have any dedicated funding or means to actually understand or communicate what the different legal or health implications look like. And then it seems as though, particularly in jurisdictions where there is some delegation of responsibility between states and local jurisdictions, whether it's cities or counties, I think it's going to be important, particularly if you want these counties to participate in the market or to be partners with the state on implementation, to ensure that your local jurisdictions have some education as well. But I think that part of the education needs to be around responsible use.
Thank you, Representative. Follow-up?
Just one quick follow-up, real quick. One, thank you for making sure that the chairman gets a follow-up of what public education will look like when it comes to this too. And then also when it comes to the social equity piece that you have talked about, if you could get the chairman like some details of that as we try to wind us up this process of figuring out what's best for Ohio. And then also make sure you also, for that to give us a reference in what state that where it has worked well. And even with the part about the tax revenue with things, because I'm literally trying to find another state that uses their tax revenue to the extent we're trying to use for law enforcement. I personally have not been able to find it, but if somebody else can find where we're using that same amount for law enforcement that we're using in 354, let me know. But I would love to hear your expertise.
Absolutely, and I can follow up. There's actually a great resource that one of my colleagues has put together is with an organization called the Network for Public Health Law. They've put together an analysis on all of the states and how they use their cannabis tax revenue. They've also put together a toolkit that looks at some of the equity programs across the country, so we'd be happy to follow up and share that information.
If you get it to me, I'll get it to the rest of the committee. Thank you very much. Any other questions for the witness?
Thank you, Chair.
Seeing none, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
testimony today. We'll now call on Tim Johnson.
Chairman Edwards, Vice Chair LaRae, and remaining members of the House Finance Committee. Thank you for entertaining me once again to share some clarification points over the last couple of days of questions that have been asked and so forth. Reference to the DRE officer and the school resource officer. I was, I guess, fortunate enough to fill both those positions during my time. But what I'd like to start with today, and I appreciate them being brought into the conversation as to where they could be used and so forth. One of the clarifications, and with full respect to the members that aren't here, to try to answer some of their questions they brought up, Rep. White was concerned with home grow and how many joints we're going to have in a given year. When you break that down, and I'm going generous here, I'm actually going higher than the numbers that she was using, but it comes down to about 6 joints a day per person in a year. That's 2,352 if you go by 1 gram per joint. The whole point of home cultivation is not just about growing cannabis so we can smoke a joint. we also want to take some of that stuff that we produce and we want to manufacture it in our homes. We want to make our own consumable products. We want to make our own topical products. So that has to be factored in. It has to be a part of it. It's just not about the combustion of a flower. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And to kind of counter, with full respect to Rep. White, I know she's not here, but with full respect to her, when we look at tobacco and we do comparables on that, if we do 1 pack of cigarettes a day, which is a lot of tobacco smokers, my parents smoked 2+ packs a day and I lost them both to cancer. But when we do comparables, if we're concerned about public safety, on tobacco, you're looking at 7,300 cigarettes a year. On the package, it says, will cause cancer, will kill you. I don't see any bills down here at the State House about terminating tobacco use in Ohio or the concerns about it. With all due respect to Rep. Schmidt, she had brought up, I believe, Brown County not having a zoning agent or a zoning department. Being a former zoning liaison rep myself, unless the laws have changed in the last few years, every county in Ohio has a township. Every county in Ohio has a zoning board. I personally looked it up myself because she made me challenge myself. Does Brown County get rid of a zoning? If a township doesn't have a zoning agency, they use the county. So there, wherever she's getting her information from, I just wanted to, I guess it's all about educational awareness, to make sure that was brought up. Rep. Jones, thanks for coming in. In reference to the Tier 2 cultivators that was presented to you yesterday, there was some misinformation, some left out information in that. Tier 2 cultivators don't only have the option of sending flower to a processor. They also have what's called a flower packaging license. I helped apply that language to the medical program. So I know that that's there. So they can process flower directly and sell it directly to the dispensaries. So they do have that avenue where a processor has no access to flower, biomass, whatever they want to call it, unless a cultivator is willing to get that to them. So it's very important that you understand that when I get to, the next topic, standalones. The importance of standalones is to make them vertically integrated so that they are a sustainable individual business, a small business here in Ohio. It gives them the opportunity to cultivate, to process, and then to dispense. It's a very important topic as far as falling under social equity that we've all been talking about as well, economic disparities impact of neighborhoods, of individuals, for veterans and so forth, that we address this. And in my full testimony, you'll find a section in there where I have a little business pack. I know my testimony is super long, but it's because I've been down here for 9 years doing this, and this is what I do. So there is a section in there on a suggestion for a business model of how they, ways that we could do that. As far as going back to be fair about it, I agree with those license holders that come in and say, we just can't hand a license out. But yet I disagree with the ones that in issue 2 that say that we want to just hand them out to a select few, preferential. So if we go back into the RFA, request for application 1, the very first beginning in the creation of this program, and we follow those guidelines, I think we would be fair in allowing those in standalone cultivators, standalone processors to become vertically integrated and address those issues that were brought up. Expungements. We keep talking about expungements. Expungements, getting your record sealed, whatever it may be. To seal a record is to remove it from the public view. To expungent is to actually destroy that record. What do we do about the internet? How do we take it off the internet? We don't. I think that issue 2 fell drastically short in addressing expungements, as to say, or the committee, or where it was introduced, we're going to expunge people with the 2.5 ounces. That's 70 grams. in Ohio, created in 1974, I believe was the correct date, we have decriminalization of 99 grams. So why are we going backwards? If we already have 99 grams on the books, why would we go backwards to 70 grams? We need to address that, as well as an organization known as the Sensible Movement Coalition have now what we call decrimmed over 40 cities or municipalities in Ohio now up to 199 grams. Again, as I talked yesterday, I know I brought in all the additional stacking of charges that law enforcement may do, so forth, and Rep. Callender and I have agreed to address that later. But we do need to look at the fact of why are we going from 99 grams back to 70 grams when it comes to decriminalization? Why, as an adult consumer, why are they only allowed to possess 2.5 ounces outside of their homes when a medical patient is allowed to possess 9 ounces of flower outside of their home? So I think those are some things that we need to look at. If we're going to do expungements, let's address nonviolent felony convictions. Let's look at where the real harm is. It's quite frankly, if you're familiar with any of the law fields, any of the law disciplines around, and I talked with the group here, the legal aid yesterday too, say, okay, we're going to expunge, something that's already decriminalized. Why was I charged for it in the first place if it's decriminalized? So we're not doing a whole lot of justice with the current, I think, language on expungements. We need to readdress that. When we talk about testing, I provided a link that takes you inside of Benaleaves, one of the processors here in Columbus, Ohio. And the owner of that, Bill Williams, one of the owners, takes the journalist around, and you'll get to see some of the security precautions going in the facility, how clean the facility is, the 3 steps that they use for testing for safety of the product, the various things on their walls that hang up that say this are all the things that we apply, the policy we apply. This stuff is in the medical program, all of these rules and so forth. All they got to do is scratch out medical and put in adult choice. So the language is very simple right there, and I think that's important that you take a look at that video. Bill does a good job of explaining how the process works in there when he's making consumable products, the safety requirements and so forth that's involved with that. Something in this medical program that I think needs to be brought up now in the adult program, it's bothered me ever since we created the program. We have something called CEUs in the medical program for dispensary agents, the people that run the cash register. They have to, every 2 years, do 16 hours of required continued education units related to the cannabis industry. The 3 disciplines that are all science-based, cultivation, processing, and testing, have to do 0. 0 testing for the science fields. 16 hours of testing for the agent, and not belittling them or anything, but for the individual that's running the register, selling the product. Doesn't make sense to me. I think we need to look at some kind of CEU requirements for them as well. And I believe there's also, in my original testimony, there is a section on that. With that, I want to kind of close on one thing here. Just as I said, I'm just trying to make some clarifications to a lot of the questions that have been brought forward and so forth from other people giving testimonies, especially from, I really appreciate you guys being as inquisitive as you are, asking all the questions you are, and I can see a lot of you learning a lot of things. The last thing I'd like to touch on, and Rep. Liston, I'm happy that you were able to hang out because I'm hoping that this will catch your ear. I have spoke with a few other legislators on this as well. Recently, the state of Texas has lost a couple children, and they've had the ERs filled with hundreds of children with a problem that a 10-year-old can walk in and buy off the shelf. And we've all got concerns. We hear all these concerns about gummies here, gummies there. Kids in the hospital because of the gummy. Was it verified? Was there any kind of a toxic test to say that that gummy was filled with THC? We don't know. They just said it was a gummy. Somebody blamed it on cannabis. Let's look at melatonin. Melatonin. There's 2 articles in my testimony. about what happened in Texas. I don't know if you've seen them yet or not, but it's very alarming. Kids are dying from melatonin. It stops your respiratory system after you take so many. So I think it's something that we might want to look at. And as I said, I've spoken with a couple legislators already on this. As far as after the first of the year, hopefully we can address it. I don't think it's something that needs to be on the CSA, but I think it's something that needs to be like some of the other drugs that are sold behind the counter. You got to be 21 to come in and purchase them. So it might be something to look at, and not to harm the industry, but it is something that is used in the hemp industry. So we may need to put out precautions. You know, if we're losing children, maybe let's get ahead of the ball. You know, if Texas is setting off the alarm, let's get out there and let's address that and touch it and see what we can do. With that, I'll go ahead and close. I know it's been a long day. It's been a long couple of weeks for all of us. Appreciate all your attention and so forth, and I am pleased to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. We will now call on Michelle Richland.
Chairman Edwards, Vice Chairman LeRae, Ranking Member Sweeney, and members of the House Finance Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss House Bill 354. I'm Michelle Richland, the Executive Director of the Ohio After School Network. I am here to urge you to include after-school programs, which currently serve more than 177,000 Ohio youth, in the state's cannabis tax revenue distribution plans. Using this revenue stream to fund Ohio's after-school and summer learning programs is one of the smartest investments we can make. These programs are proven to set up kids and families to thrive. They help youth learn, grow, make smart choices, avoid drugs, heal from trauma, gain real-world skills, and graduate from high school. Programs help working parents keep their jobs, connect families to resources in the local community, and reduce crime in our neighborhoods. Now that 24 states have legalized adult-use cannabis, many, such as Alaska, California, Colorado, Illinois, and Vermont, are investing funds back into youth development programs like After School, because they positively impact young people during the years when they are learning how to think critically, develop relationships, and make responsible decisions. For example, in Alaska, after-school programs are using funding to implement a cannabis education and prevention curriculum for youth as a strategy to combat future substance use and misuse. This is Ohio's opportunity to make similar investment in our kids' futures. Inclusion of after-school programs would better support Ohio families and youth for the following reasons. The hours between 2 and 6 p.m. are the peak time for youth to commit crimes, use drugs, engage in risky behaviors. In Ohio, more than 265,000 kids are alone and unsupervised after school. After-school programs can turn that time of risk into opportunity by building protective factors to help youth avoid substance misuse, make smart decisions, and ultimately reach their full potential. Surrounded by caring mentors, youth engage in deeper learning and enrichment. They develop life skills and are supported on their path toward adulthood. Research shows that after-school programs help kids make academic gains, improve work habits and school attendance, and graduate on time. After-school and summer programs are especially critical now as we navigate an urgent mental health crisis. In Ohio, 43% of high schoolers reported feeling sad or hopeless, and 10% attempted suicide, making suicide the second leading cause of death for youth and young adults in the state. After-school programs serve both as a fundamental setting in which healthy development and learning take place, as well as an intervention through which social and emotional skills and competencies are fostered. They provide safe spaces for youth to connect with peers, build positive relationships, learn life skills, enjoy healthy meals, and be physically active while helping them develop self-control, confidence, and strong social skills. Ohio parents strongly support and rely on these programs. 92% are satisfied with their children's program. 87% are in favor of public funding for after school, and that support is high across the political spectrum. 76% say programs help them keep their jobs, and 74% say programs reduce the likelihood youth will engage in risky behaviors. 69% say programs keep kids safe and out of trouble. Voters agree. In a nationwide poll, 8 in 10 said that after-school programs are an absolute necessity for their community, and they want newly elected federal, state, and local leaders to provide more funding for them. What's more, after-school programs provide a solid return on investment. Research shows that every $1 invested in an after-school program saves at least $3 by reducing crime and juvenile delinquency, increasing kids' earning potential, and improving kids' academic performance in school. But for every Ohio youth enrolled in a program, 5 more are waiting to get in. That's more than 814,000 youth who are missing out on these life-changing opportunities because our state does not have enough programs for everyone who needs them. Access to programs is far worse in low-income communities and communities of color, both of which have been historically and disproportionately targeted and affected by drug enforcement. Demand for programs in Ohio remains strong. More than $318 million was requested to support after-school and summer programs. Only $89 million was provided through the American Rescue Plan for those programs. We need more funding to improve access for all who need it. Because of after-school's overwhelming public support, solid return on investment, and proven track record for preventing drug use and crime, as well as supporting youth mental health, we request that 10% of cannabis revenue funds be allocated to these programs. Let's put this new revenue right back into our communities and use it to support kids and families today. Thank you for considering after school for Ohio's cannabis tax revenue.
Thank you very much. Questions for the witness? Representative Brent.
Thank you so much, Chairman, and thanks to the witness for coming before. I was just looking up while you were just talking. I just noticed, for one, because I always like to start off with the facts. So here in Ohio, we have 1.6 million young people just in public schools. I don't know how many we have in charter or private, just in public schools. And it looks like your program service 177,000 youth here within the state of Ohio. Just want to lay out the facts. So we're looking at maybe like less than 10% of all Ohio children is in your program. So just for clarification purposes, you want us to give 10% of our revenue from cannabis to your program that only serves less than 10% of the kids here in the state of Ohio?
No, so I do not run programs directly. Thank you for the question.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair and Representative. Thank you for the question. I support the people who run those programs. So I used to run programs directly, and I love that work. No, so this would be funding in the budget for after school programs in the state, so we can increase that number from 177,000. So it's not for my organization. I'm here as an advocate for all the out-of-school time programs in Ohio.
So follow up real quick. Thank you. So you brought up about Alaska. Alaska used it as a grant program. I'm just kind of going up. Please clarify that it was a grant program to do particular cannabis education and prevention curriculum. Would there be more of an appetite just for it to be a grant program, that if people want to implement a cannabis education prevention curriculum, instead of just putting money just towards after school, because then maybe we can use it for, regular school programs, after school programs, or anything like that. Just trying to see if there's more of an appetite for a grant program instead of just allocating it just for that.
We would be open to any opportunity for grants for funding for out-of-school time programs in Ohio. The only funding Ohio has specifically for out-of-school time is federal funds that come through our Department of Education and Workforce now. There are some publicly funded child care funds, but that only goes up to age 12, and that is for the most needy, and there's still kids that fall in that gap of need. The funding would be for any of those programs to increase the education of cannabis use and misuse. Now, how you want to go about doing that and making that law, I will defer to you for that. But we would be happy to put forth ideas about that and what other states are doing. I'm part of a 50-state network, so there's one of me in each of the 50 states, and so the other states that are doing this work already will share their plans and what's worked and what hasn't and what they've learned. And so I would be happy, I know you're big on research, so I'd be happy to research that and give you examples of what all those states are doing, specifically the Alaska curriculum.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. I just hope that as we talk about public education, Mr. Chairman, that this can be something that can be open to all children, not just kids who go to after-school program, Because if only 10% of our kids are, my bad. If only, my mic was off. If only 10% of our kids are in after-school programs, and we have 1.6 million of them that are in schools, we need something that all kids can access, not just kids who are in after-school program. Just to think of a broader picture. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Brandt. Representative Thomas.
May I, I'm sorry, may I just quickly, Chairman? Yes, only 10% are in it because we don't have funding to fund it for everyone who wants it and needs it. But yes, your point is valid, so.
Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ma'am, thank you for your testimony. You're spot on what you're attempting to accomplish, and obviously additional funding will allow that to expand into a much broader reach. During the discussions in the budget, one area that I had introduced to address the issue of our youth was extracurricular activities in the community as well as in the school. I was a baseball coach, and I coached kids from D-ball all the way through to A-ball. If you might not understand
I do.
that.
I'm a baseball fan. I get it. Yes.
And our focus was not so much teaching them all the basics of how to play baseball, but a greater focus was life coaching, life experiences, and making good decisions. But we were very limited simply because of the resources that we had. Coaches were forced to come out of their pockets to take the kids to eat and picking the kids up, all these kinds of things. And I said, my goodness, we got to come up with a source of funding to address these kids, especially in the urban core. And so the sports betting was a method by which to do that, which was a percentage of the dollars were supposed to be utilized specifically for that reason. Whether it's extracurricular activities in the school, if it's chess club, if it's glue, whatever, or if it's in the community, if it's some activities, soccer, whatever the case may be. That was the means, but then the House sent it to the Senate, and the Senate took that portion out of the bill. And now I'm hearing you just, based on your testimony, exactly what we were attempting to accomplish. So my question to you is that do you think there's, well, I guess you just answered it. I shouldn't even, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think that by adding more resources for those organizations that are either in the schools, extracurricular activities after school, and then the organizations that are in the community, the football coaches and baseball coaches and all these other soccer coaches, all that stuff, if there's money available, the sky is the limit in terms of the kids that you can reach. And the only reason I say that is because there was a significant number of kids that we could not bring into the program for a number of reasons. Mom didn't have the money to pay the league.
Transportation.
All the transportation, all that stuff. This is a huge opportunity to begin to address that problem. Would you agree?
100%, yes. I got into the advocacy piece a little late for the gambling tax, and I did look at that, but it had already passed by the time I was looking at some substantial state funding for out-of-school time programs to the other representative's point, to increase, so more than just 10% of kids have access to these programs. And I don't think that 10% of cannabis funding is going to be the end. I think it's just the start of a nice down payment for programs and access for programs for everybody who wants them. Students, parents, children, communities, community-based organizations that are doing this work. That's exactly right. And I think a part of the problem not understanding, we know we're putting a lot of money into education, but that money doesn't trickle down to these community-based organizations that are hosting these after-school programs with academics and athletics and things like that. And I think there's some confusion in the legislature about where those funds are going, or the wraparound funds that have been been provided. Those often do not make it to these community-based organizations that are doing this work because our schools have been underfunded, and so they're supplanting instead of working with the partners, the people that have done this for 20 years. We've been an organization for 20 years supporting out-of-school time programs. So,
yeah, and one
Thank
just
you.
one final comment,
Okay.
and this 1 minute. Based on what you're saying, and I've heard a lot about money going to the police and things of that nature, law enforcement. If we're really going to have an impact on crime, especially when it comes to our young people as well as some of our adults, if we're really going to have that impact, we got to put resources into the community. I think what we're talking about here is folks have to understand that when those kids leave out of the classroom and go home, they go to an environment.
Yes.
And that environment there are just so many areas that can impact them in a very negative way.
Yes.
And if we can avoid that by kid leaves school, kids got to go to practice, the coaches now are in their heads, and now we're building some very positive.
And the mentorship, like you said, that is I ran programs for a dozen years. The most important and most impactful thing we did was the mentorship piece for the youth.
Thank you, Representative Thomas. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today. We'll now call on Michael Keller.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the body. My name is Bryce Keller. I'm a defense attorney from Dayton, Ohio. I graduated in 2013 from the University of Dayton, and I'm an Air Force, yes, sir. I'm an Air Force veteran. I'm a 100% service-connected disabled veteran with PTSD. And so while I began my law school career at Gonzaga, I was constantly being hospitalized or had to take medicine and other things. And once I finally got to Dayton, I lived near a VA hospital, and I finally went in and checked in the VA, and they said that many of the drugs that they were giving me from the private sector were inappropriate for someone that suffers from my conditions. And I found about a year into getting on the proper medication with the VA, I found medical marijuana to help, and have been advocating for the 9 years since. It's been a long time since I've been in this room. I testified before the Medical Marijuana Task Force and the Select Committee on Medical Marijuana. I was a campaign consultant for the Responsible Ohio campaign in 2015. My point today is I want to say that I'm proud of the government of Ohio for embracing what the voters have chosen and taking it seriously that we need to move forward with this. I think that it was alarming to think that the Senate wanted to nix the home grow entirely. I'm glad that we got that back into reality of what the voters did vote on. They knew when they went to the ballot box that we're talking about home grow. They knew that there's going to be, these dispensaries will be open and they'll be in our communities. And they knew that there may be some limitations for communities that might have restrictions on dispensaries in their areas. But the point is, we're getting out of the business of sending our police officers to hunt down people for marijuana. And we had problems before where we had the driving issue where the federal government said that if you get a drug crime in Ohio and you plead guilty to a drug crime or found guilty of a drug crime, you automatically lose your driver's license for 6 months. We had a situation where marijuana is decriminalized, you're not entitled to a public defender, and if you don't get a private attorney to switch that to disorderly conduct, there goes your driver's license for something that's a $150 ticket. And so I think we need to preserve home grow. I think we need to recognize that the expungement piece is very important. Tim brought up the difference between 2.5 ounces and 100 grams. I think the expungement needs to be at 100 grams. That's what's been decriminalized for possession this whole time. Maybe even 200 grams. Expunge the misdemeanor ones as well. You know, for law enforcement, this is not over. Law enforcement today has drug dogs on the street that smell for marijuana that's now legal in the state. Every drug dog in the state that sniffs for marijuana and violates my rights as a medical patient, my right to possess marijuana to a certain amount. I mean, we don't have drug dogs sniffing for alcohol just to find the one-off guy that brewed some whiskey that didn't have a distillery license or something. That doesn't make any sense. So what we need to do is recognize that law enforcement still is taking a tack against marijuana. On the day of the election, they arrested in Greene County, the task force arrested multiple people for having marijuana and concentrates, and they just got them because they had more than the allotted amount. So it's bulk. So if you have bulk, then you're automatically presumed to be a trafficker, and then bam, they just arrest people the day after the election. You know, it's not like they didn't know those people. They didn't have years of investigations where they can go pick up whoever they want, but it's still an active thing for law enforcement. So I commend you for all your work to empower what the people voted on, and that's to get us out of the business of enforcing marijuana, especially as it's been inappropriately enforced, and get these stores and regulation to the people, including the home grow piece. So thank you, Chairman.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today. That marks the end of submitted testimony. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to testify? Okay, you need to fill out a form after you testify. Okay, what's your name? Cody Merrick. Oh, okay. Yeah, we skipped over you because you weren't here at the beginning. You can come on. You can come on up. You can come on up. Testify. We are running against a tight timeline. We got 10 minutes until at least the majority. I think the minority's caucusing in 10 minutes. So if we can be quick, that'd be great.
I'll do the best to just keep it sweet and short and to the point. My name's Cody Merrick. I have concerns that are different than a lot of people that I've seen come up here and speak. A lot of people are concerned about where's this money going? Am I going to benefit from this money? All that. I'm a citizen that's been harmed by this drug war. So I would just like to speak a little bit on my experiences. When I hear that this money is going to be used for law enforcement and to build more prisons, I just would like to say that it deeply offends me. We voted for this money to help us, and those institutions have spent the last 60 years wrongfully jailing people and destroying families, really doing nothing but hurt the cannabis community that they're asking money from now, and I just don't feel like that's right at all. We passed this bill to help us, not the police and the prison system. From my personal experiences, the only way this plant can ruin your life is if you have police contact while you have it. If you are caught with this plant, this is really the only way this plant can ruin your life. I've had this help me in numerous ways with mental health problems over my life. It's helping me take 5 different pharmaceutical drugs. I will just say a little bit more. I went to college for aviation maintenance at Sinclair University. Shortly after graduating, I got into trouble for a marijuana charge. I was no longer able to pursue the career that I went to school for because of prohibition. It's caused me and my family a lot of grief. I went to school to have a great career, and this has stood in my way my whole adult life. I haven't been able to get housing. Nobody wants to rent to somebody with that on their record. I don't feel that people that have gotten in trouble with marijuana that are nonviolent are bad people. So really my ask is this, that some of this money gets put back to the people that have been harmed by this and not by the police. Standing in front of you as somebody that has been severely harmed, and my fight's not over. I still have legal problems. The state wants to put me in jail for this. This is very important to me. These hearings are one of the only things that give me hope. A few months ago, I wanted to kill myself because what I have to look forward to, I don't get to enjoy the legalization that everybody else is going to. I'm very afraid that people like me that want to be valued members of society are going to be left behind by this. Any questions? I'm sorry, it's a little.
Any questions for the witness?
But
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we're tight on time, so I'm going to ask a question. You said you went to school for aviation
Yes.
Maintenance or whatever. Did you earn your degree in that field?
Yes, I graduated.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today.
Thank you.
we had someone else that wanted to testify. If you just want to leave it right here up on that shelf over here, we'll get it afterwards. If you wouldn't mind starting off by telling us who you are and who you're with and all that stuff.
I'm just taking this off. Sorry. Hair is kind of difficult. All right, so I'm Carlasia Webb. I'm here as an individual for myself. So I do work in the medical marijuana industry, and seeing all of the changes has been kind of, being here, seeing you all question as to certain limits in how to even make stuff kind of makes more sense as to why the bill looks the way it does. I went over the bill as I was sitting back there. I'm gonna try to make it quick. So I'm gonna do the certain topics I've seen. It was part of the bill 3780.23. I wrote it down on my paper, but it states that 12% is going, this is just one specific question I had. It states that 12% is going to the sheriff's department for them to teach mental health, and only 2% is going to mental health individuals to help with the candidate. So it's like, for me, that's the statement that shows that it's more about revenue for the police rather than helping the community and giving more out to it. So I think that would be would be a better revise to give 12% to mental health advocators, people that are actually licensed, went to school for it, rather than sheriffs who barely have any education for sociology, empathy. You know, that would also be a good thing for those. Instead of, it's another thing I was going to go over. The cannabis social equity and jobs portion states about 3780, which if you go to the top, is all the funding going to the sheriffs. So it's essentially stating that what's being given to the sheriffs for their learning, their education about topics that they're already aware of, it's not really formulating together for me with that. For also, so 3780.35, it says that for implementation of, people are able to it does not cover job security for with that. It would be very important to implement not doing it on the job rather than, because people are allowed to do stuff. Let me take a breath, because I'm a 22-year-old person who I now have a record from Greene County because of laws like this. I work in medical marijuana industry where I have to turn down certain people or tell certain people they can't get this or that because there's such stigmatism or undecided issues going on with this issue too. So I would say the implementation for not on the job, as I heard somebody say that there are not testing for your actual levels at that certain moment, but as I looked it up, there's something called, where is it at? It was called, I typed it down, narco check, which is a pre-dosage. So it tells there's a 3 meter and a 5 meter, which will tell the THC levels in an individual. So that is on the market, although accuracy, but what is truly accurate in the days of today. Also for 3780.36D, it's stating the driving, as he said before, with comparing it to tobacco, marijuana, personally as a personal medical marijuana user, it's not truly debilitating, in which that's only personal. But should it be looked at as alcohol or something that's debilitating or puts other people into dangerous situations? I'm not completely sure, which is not my personal essence to say. But I see people smoking cigarettes all the time in their car. The police is not going to pull anybody over because they're smoking a cigarette or because it smells like cigarettes. They're not going to take you to jail. There will be no further, let me look in the car. It will just be, that's the smell. So for me, I feel like that should be implemented in a different way. I feel like that should be looked over. Also, for section 5120.181, it states that, I think it said 10% is going to building back county jails. Ohio is number 5 for homelessness. There are so many children in systems that don't get any help, any funding, but 10% is going back to building county jails. I understand that with the passing of issue 2, that revenue to police and the sheriff's force is getting cut down, which is inevitable with any passing of any drugs or laws. But do I think there are a lot bigger avenues that Ohio as a state needs to take care of that can be easily implemented or helped with the tax revenue of the cannabis industry? Yes. And to say that you're putting over 60% towards the same exact people that are still going to make money off of this, because they're still able to pull me over today and say your car smells like weed, let me check it. If there happens to be more than 2.5 ounces, that it's still just, it's almost contradictive of itself. Do you want this to be truly free? In essence, people can grow tobacco and take tobacco to their friends. I can grow a plant and I can't take it anywhere because it's stated that I can't. Also, so that's with the gifting. And also, I said maybe with the funding to researchers to test for specific levels, like to make the test for the specific levels, give research to that. As Kat was saying, give research to implement better ways to take control of the situation rather than to give it to sheriffs or anything other than the community or bettering to make this an easier transition for everybody else. And I just also want to say, with the ability for the 2.5, if a medical marijuana patient can have 9 ounces, it's contradictive to say you can only drive with 2.5. There's a lot in this bill that's contradictory to itself, and I feel like there just has to be certain implementations of real life instances rather than what it could be or what it should be. And yeah, and I would also say, for me personally, just because I also have a record now that I cannot get expunged until June because of a 0.5, rehabilitation centers, classes, there's a lot more to give to people rather than to make them a criminal. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today. Seeing no further testimony, that marks the end of the third hearing on House Bill 354. With no further business before the committee stands adjourned.